Good evening. The regularly scheduled City Council meeting for the City of San Dimas, March 9th, will come to order. Pursuant to the Governor's order, Executive Order dated March 17, 2020, the City Council is authorized to hold public meetings via teleconferencing and to make meetings accessible electronically to all members of the public seeking to observe and to address the legislative body. All Brown Act provisions that require the physical presence of City Council members or the public for the City Council meeting are waived. Madam City Clerk, would you read the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Bertone.
Here.
Councilmember Ebner.
Here.
Councilmember Viana.
Present.
Councilmember Weber.
Here.
Mayor Bedar.
Here.
The record will show all council members are in attendance.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oral communications. Members of the audience are invited to address the City Council on any item on this agenda or not. Okay. On this agenda, public comments will not be taken during each individual agenda item, except for public hearing items. Comments on public hearing items will be heard when that item is scheduled for discussion. Under provisions of the Brown Act, the legislative body is prohibited from engaging in discussion or on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. However, your concerns may be referred to the staff or set for discussion at a later date. Each of the speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. This will be the only oral communication period with the exception of public hearings. Directions for public comment period. There will be 3 options for members of the public to participate during oral communications. There will be 1 oral communication period at the beginning of the meeting for the public to comment on any matter on or off the agenda. Each speaker will have 1 3-minute opportunity to make their comments. At the 2-minute mark, staff will announce 1 minute remains. Public comment will not be taken during each of an individual item except for public comment, except the public comments will be taken separately for the public hearing agenda. Public comments will be taken in the following order. Written comments received by email before 5 o'clock will be provided to the council, posted on the website, acknowledged by name and topic, and added to the permanent record. Item 2, in-person participants. Current order provides that only 15 people be allowed in one room. Council members, staff members, and public will not exceed 15 persons requirement in the council chambers. A speaker will be required to facilitate and track the number of participants in the council chambers. That's a speaker's card. If you do not wish to list your name, you may identify yourself as speaker 1 or the number in the queue. The cards will be presented to the city clerk, who will call the speakers to the podium in the order the cards have been submitted. Once 3 minutes has expired, speakers must exit the chambers using the double doors to the right of the podium and exit City Hall. Staff will be in the lobby monitoring the number of attendees and ushering in the speakers into the chambers when space permits. Phone participants may call 909-394-6206 before the closure of the public comment period. Public comments may also be submitted by logging into the meeting through Zoom platform with the following information. Meeting ID 909-394-6200 with a passcode of 714-714. You may dial in on Zoom by calling 213 338-8477 and using the same ID and password. Madam City Clerk, do you have any written comments?
Mayor, council members, and members of the audience, the City Clerk's office received public comments from the following individuals. Sean Cesares sent comment in support of the council continuing with keeping the meetings orderly. We received two emails, one from Catherine Began in support of the SP 11 Area 1 grading change. We received an additional email from Christopher and Linda Lowry in favor of option number 1. We received another email in support of unlimited grading for SP 11 from Nardine Suarez. Those in opposition are Lou Karen, Betty Jean Lamb, Larry Chiminetti, Mark Canavari, and Amanda Lee were all in opposed to the request for unlimited grading. Also Anthony Tellers. And that completes the written public comments received by the City Clerk's office.
Thank you, and they'll be admitted into the public record.
They will be, and they have been posted on the website.
Thank you.
And given copies to all the council members.
Okay, second, we'll ask for any in-person speakers. Do you have cards to call?
The first speaker will be Dr. Ronald Liskinsky, and the second speaker up will be Gloria Stevens.
Okay.
Dr. Liskinsky and Gloria Stevens.
My name is Dr. Ronald Liskanich, and I live at 1574 Calle Christina, and I've lived on Calle Christina for the past 30 years. The last time I was in this building was regarding my house up on Calle Christina for a room addition. Some of you were there, well aware what went on with that. And it's difficult to build in San Dimas, especially on Calle Christina, with the grading restrictions that are there. So when I looked around and I said to myself, where else in San Dimas can you are limited to 200 square feet of grading? And I don't know if there's any other areas. If I'm wrong, please inform me. The 200 square feet is very unreasonable. You have to look at topography when you look at this. So what are the lots that are there that are left? They're either hills or they're cliffs. So if you're a cliff, you're going to need more fill in order to be able to build a structure, because if you go up 3 stories, I believe the limit's 33 feet, now you have a monster of a tower sticking out from the ground, which I think is more of an eyesore than a flat structure. The other thing too is if you look at the contour of the lots that are there, of the ones that are hills, what happens is you can grade for the flat part of the lot for your structure, but then the ends are left with the hills on site. So what happens is, I used to live at 1521 Calle Christina, the house across the street, if you look at it, there's a big mound of dirt that separates the 2 lots because he was not able to grade that. And then on top of that, you have whatever's permitted, a 5-foot fence. So it does, you have to have common sense when you look at these things, when you build these things. You want it to be flowing. I think that's what the intent is, and that's not what's been followed through. If you are not allowed to move the dirt, it makes the designing of the home more difficult and expensive. There's been this mantra out there about save Via Verde. Well, let's look at these lots on Calle Christina. They were already planned out and approved for building, but they can't build on them, most of them, because of the 200-foot restriction. Gentlemen, we should just use common sense where we're looking at this. Go by a case-by-case basis. The other thing I'd invite you to do is, if you think it's so easy to build on one of these lots, why doesn't the city buy one? Use the constraints that you're using and have your planning department plan one out and see if you would live in that structure. And I think if you did that, you'd have a different view. Gentlemen, just use common sense when you're deciding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Dr. Gloria Stevens, and I reside at 1574 Calle Christina, and I am here to voice my concern about the grading limits within the specific Plan 11, Planning Area 1. 200 cubic yards of grading beyond the unlimited amount needed for residents and driveways too restrictive, and the amount of earth, dirt that can be moved should be increased. I feel many of the lots left on our street would have great difficulty in building due to their topography and the current restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is John Begin, and I live at 1539 Calle Christina. I also recently purchased the half-constructed home located at 1533 Calle Christina. All my neighbors know of this house because it had been under construction for 4 years, then sat empty for another year before I acquired it. I did not purchase this home because I needed another project or it was some great deal. Believe me, I didn't need it, and it was barely a fair deal. I bought it because everyone, especially my wife, is tired of looking at a partially finished neighborhood that looks like a construction zone. Out of the 36 legal lots in Area 1 that were developed over 37 years ago, we have 3 half-completed houses with construction fencing, temporary toilets, and visible trash that we have to look at every day. The 7 other vacant lots are basically home for tumbleweeds and the coyotes that are constantly going after our pets. We, as a custom lot community, desperately would like to see these properties completed so everyone can have some new neighbors and enjoy their homes with some peace and quiet. These remaining lots were obviously not the pick of the litter for several reasons and need some help from the City Council in order for them to be developed. The main reason is that these lots all need grading outside of the current rules allowed to attract someone to invest millions of dollars and 2 or 3 years of their life getting a home approved and built. 98% of the homeowners on these 2 streets, Calle Christina and Paseo Lucinda, otherwise known as SP11 Area 1, have signed a petition in favor of removing the current grading limitations so they can upgrade their properties and have some outdoor entertainment areas. You, the City Council, are the rule makers and have the power to grant this request. We're all asking you, Please grant this reasonable request and let us all move forward with our lives. Thank you for your consideration. If you have any questions, there's 40 seconds left.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I start? And then Good evening, Mayor, Councilman, City Manager, and staff. I am in support of SB 11 Area 1 grading change to unlimited grading. These two streets need to fall in line with the rest of San Dimas hillside communities. My name is Catherine Begin. I live at 1539 Calle Cristina in San Dimas. I'd like to say thank you for visiting us and our two streets in Area 1 of SB 11. I've enjoyed meeting everybody and showing you guys around and letting you know our issues. It is our hope that the 36 custom lots in Villa Verde Ridge and in the HOA, that you all gain some enlightenment, some truth, and some education on this grading change issue as you visited our area. We residents own 2, 4, 9, or more acres of legal home buildable land and lots here, yet we can only build on maybe 15 to 20% of the lots. The restriction that no other hillside communities have, but one other, maybe in San Dimas, needs to change and be uniform to the city. The rest of our land is 50% is open space for the neighbors and community to all to view. So if you've been up there, you know that the actual orange area is actually our buildable space, if you can see, and the yellow area is all free, open space land that we leave for the community, which is probably 40 acres, at least 40 acres, that we pay taxes on. So, excuse me for 1 minute. Let's see where I am. And I just feel that's a very, very generous gift to our neighbors in our city, that we paid the tax on that 40 acres and we leave it as general open space. We have no neighbors below us or around us. Let's see here. And we are a very, very quiet, peaceful neighborhood. As you will see, we have a petition with 28 on our two streets out of 37 lots right now that are for this. Let's see here. I just want to let you know that we feel there, and I've asked that there are really no view, there are no view rights really in San Dimas. So please take that in account when you're talking to other residents or complaints that you do hear. And as well, the trees that are allowed to grow sky high, they actually do cut off part of your view. So we are asking just for a more usable backyard, a usable level for our properties, as well as many of our residents are they're of older age. It's not easy to go down 3 levels to get to your pool when you actually have 4 acres and you're only allowed to use 2, but you can only build on 10%. It just doesn't make sense. It's not common sense grading, and it really doesn't make sense here. I'd also like to ask if you could please ignore some of the fabricated opposition and comments that are out all over social media. There are, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Robert Prada, and I live at 1556 Calle Cristina with my wife and family and kids, and we've been there since 2004. And I want to impress upon the members of the council that this decision actually impacts us. We live there. We've shown up here. We're in support of allowing us to do proper grading. But it impacts us in a real tangible way. We're not here to tell other people what to do with their property. We're here to simply ask, can you allow us to do reasonable work on our property? And the way it impacted our lives is I wanted to put a basketball court in the backyard many years ago, drew up the plans, had an architect and everything, brought it to the city, and it was rejected because of the 200 cubic yard movement. Impacts like that impacted me, my family, and all of our people around us. And so what we're asking is that can these restrictions be lifted? Everyone who lives on Calle Cristina, we want to improve our community. We want it to be beautiful. We want this restriction to be lifted so that we can improve it. We are proud of our neighborhood. We're proud of the city of San Dimas. And we're looking at this as we're being singled out with restrictions that don't apply to anyone else. And so all we're asking is that you lift this restriction, allow us to build on our own property, and allow us to do so in a reasonable, prudent manner. And what you'll see is that that community will allow certain homes to be built. I look across a few homes, a few areas, and there's just tumbleweeds and garbage there. Right next to my house is a construction fence that's been there for probably 7 years around a big mound of dirt because the construction was never finished, in part because of these restrictions. So in that lot right now are pylons that go down 30 feet into the ground, and they've never been covered over. They're still there. So we're asking the council to allow us to do what we can and what we're able to do with our own land, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name's Leo Wills, and I live at 1580 Calle Cristina, Area 1, SP 11. I've been there since 2006. I had the dubious distinction of being the highest taxpayer in the city of San Dimas for many years. I hope that's not the case anymore. I haven't checked. But again, with my neighbors and my friends, I'd like you all to please consider, reconsider the restrictions on us for improving the values and the beauty of our neighborhood. We're in an area that we're all extremely proud of. Right now, because of my understanding, I'm not a developer or builder, but my understanding is that there's not a lot of interest in people coming in and building and finishing building in our neighborhoods and the available lots, due to due to the restrictions and so on in dealing with San Dimas. Again, I think that everyone that's investing in our neighborhood has common interest in seeing the neighborhood improving and to be improved, and we would like to see our city council stand behind us in building that neighborhood. So again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next is Pauline.
Good evening. Pauline Barter, 1544 Calle Cristina. From what I understand, this 200-foot rule is over 40 years old. This restriction is not realistic for the homeowners. Our home was built 21 years ago. We were forced to put our pool from street level 3 stories down. There are over 45 steps to get down to our pool, which worked 21 years ago. It doesn't work now. We have a large empty space lot behind our pool. We cannot let our grandchildren play out there because it's infested with coyotes. it's a very difficult situation. I don't think there is any homeowner in our neighborhood who is not responsible. This rule is very difficult to deal with and to understand. And as we've said, we've all basically said the same thing. Something has got to change for us, not only for us, but for the future of homeowners, these empty lots, and 200 feet of dirt. Everybody knows how much dirt that is to move, and it's nothing. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Nora Chen, and then Joseph next.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city manager, and staff. Long time no see. My name is Nora Chen, and I'm the manager of the St. Dimas Library. The library is still closed. However, we still have the sidewalk services. What you can do for our sidewalk service, you can apply for a library card, you can borrow books, you can do the free 10-page printing, and you can pick up the text forms. And recently we have a new program. It's called laptop and hotspot. If you don't have laptop and you don't have internet access at your home, you can borrow a laptop and Wi-Fi, the Mi-Fi, the hotspot device from the library. So our sidewalk service hours is Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. On Tuesday, it will be 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the new program for the library is that we expand our Wi-Fi services. So you can drive to our parking lot and go there and to access to our Wi-Fi. However, you need to have a library card and the PIN number to access the free Wi-Fi from the library. It will be 24 hours. Sometimes that you have down or Sunday you don't have internet, you can come to the parking lot. But if you don't have a library card, just give us a call and see how you can apply for a library card, or you already have a library card and you didn't know. And we can give you a library card number and PIN number, and you can easily access to the Wi-Fi. And right now, we are still waiting for Board of Supervisors instructions to reopen the library. So at this moment, we remain standing by. So, but I believe it will be the near future, just like everyone hope. And just check our website. And I will come here to give you update if we have the new kind of instructions. And so for more information, you can check our website, which is lacountylibrary.org. And you can always call the library. The library phone number is 909-599-6738. And our staff will be there, happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Deangelo. I live in 1603 Calle Cristina. I've been living in San Dimas since 1974. I lived in Camino del Sur and had problems with San Dimas building. I lived in Paseo Susana and I had problems with San Dimas building. I live now in 1603 and I continue to have problems. I have no help from San Dimas. I've been spending nothing but money in San Dimas, upgrading, making things more beautiful for San Dimas. And I believe it would be more revenue for San Dimas. Excuse me. And it seems like I get no help. I've had 18 surgeries. I can't go down the steps just like the other lady said, like I used to. I can't do that. And I've had 2 dogs disappear because of coyotes. I chased one down. I saved one of the dogs, and 2 dogs I lost. I got grandchildren. I'm losing dirt from erosion. We need to stop this. We need to be able to help ourselves, and you guys help us, because it can't continue this way. You know, we have so much animosity against us. I don't know why. All we do is spend nothing but money and try to beautify San Dimas. San Dimas is a fantastic place. I've been living here since 1974. I've been raising 6 kids in San Dimas. I would like to continue raising my grandkids. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Michael Saleh.
Good evening. My name is Michael Saleh. I am building my dream home on 1532 Cali Christina. We're almost there. It's been taking almost 7 years to finish my home, but finally I told my builder, he was telling me that a lot of obstacles in the backyard. I finally told him, forget the pool, forget the jacuzzi, just build me a deck in the backyard and just finish up the front so I can move in. I got 3 boys who graduated, went to Chill School, Lone Hill, San Dimas, and they all became lawyers. And after a long day, they like to come home and play sports. Our dream home would be a backyard basketball court. And if you could allow us just to give us an extra 200 feet, we really appreciate the city of San Dimas. Thank you so much for listening to us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Art Baruta.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Art Baruter. I live at 1544 Calle Christina. My wife was in here a little bit earlier. I have lived in San Dimas off and on, but in the neighborhood of 50 years. I've had 3 homes in San Dimas. 2 of them were tract homes. 1 of them was a custom. We bought a lot after searching several places and saying that, yes, we'd like to be in San Dimas. We didn't realize the amount of difficulty we would have in trying to develop a home. Our home, as it originally would have come out, was very, very nice, and the home we have now is nice. But if we hadn't made some exceptions, it would be terrible. You would walk out the back door and you would have a set of stairs going all the way down to the next level. So we were faced with putting in to have any type of backyard at all, because we were on our limit. We were faced with putting in something called a geogrid wall. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. It's a wall that has no mortar in it, very little substance underneath it, but they're qualified to go as high as 30 feet. We didn't go anywhere near that, but it really covers the whole back of our yard, and on around covers part of the driveway and a large part of the back end of the house. If that wall ever comes down, the house is coming down. In addition to that, it cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 to have that put in. After a couple of years, we decided that we wanted to have a pool. Only it came to a dead end. Because we had to put in a geogrid wall if we wanted any backyard. I think I've run out of time. Is that what it means?
You still have another 55 seconds.
Oh, okay. Then I'll cut to the chase. This isn't right. This restriction that prevents us from developing our properties in a manner that would be acceptable to us who own these properties and also to other people who are around. We're not asking to go in and cut the hills down. We don't want to do that. But we want to be able to have the ability to develop these properties in the manner in which they should. There's only, as I understand it, 7 custom lots left. And there are, I think I understand, about 4 applications in for pools in the areas that have been built already. I was told when I built my home and ran into this problem that the reason there was a restriction was because the council was afraid of being sued by the homeowners. I guess I've run out of time. And that's what we were told over and over again by people from the building department.
All right, sir, your time is...
That's not...
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
That's it.
Sherry? Anybody else? Thank you. Third, we'll ask for if there are any phone speakers. Okay.
Mayor and City Council members.
She's talking. I can't. Can we get her voice back?
Yeah, we'll get her. We'll get the Zoom participants after the call closes.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? I think the host is unmuted.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now. The phone caller.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You're on the air.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, this is Gary Enderly, president of Via Verde Ridge Homeowners Association. I would like to speak in regards to SP 11. Last year, when we first became aware of this subject, it was by chance, not by being informed by a city council member or staff. We only found out about it when it was going to be put on the agenda. We then found out that council member Vienna and Weber were talking with Mr. Begin about what he wanted to do with his spec lots he purchased within our association. He wanted to have more grading than what was permitted by the city or the association. The argument at that time was that there was 7 lots that hadn't been developed because of the grading restrictions. We proved that was a lie and had nothing to do with the lots that haven't been developed. We also found out that Mr. Begin had submitted plans to the city and with no knowledge from the city council, without submitting them and also didn't submit them to the association, which is required by the city and the association. The process has been in effect for 38 years, and I understand that that particular policy is going to change. We have still not seen the plans. Mr. Begin knew those rules as he built his own home in our association several years ago and followed the proper procedures at that time. No custom lot homeowners have come to the board of directors, complained about, or asked for additional grading. We've had a homeowner on our other customer lots on our board of directors for several years. It's only an issue now because Mr. Begin and his campaign to get what he wants. Our board of directors had shared our willingness with the council member to meet with the city staff to discuss this matter, but that never happened. The facts speaks for themselves and clearly indicates that certain council members are attempting to undermine our association and proceed with the establishment by both city and our association. I believe every homeowners association in the city of San Dimas should be concerned about the action of these council members. HOAs are established and empowered by the city so that they could be run by its elected board of directors. Please let us do what you intended us to do and support us in the effort to maintain the spirit of SP 11. Councilmember Vienna has stated that property owners should be able to do whatever they want to on their own property. Unfortunately, some of those rights are waived when you sign up to be in a homeowners association. We are only following what everyone agreed to when they became a member of the Be Very Rich. I do not believe that this issue needs to go to the
Mr.
Planning
Enderly,
Commission.
I'm sorry, sir, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record. And your 3 minutes starts now. Please also mute your device.
I'm sorry, sir, your time has expired. Thank you. Thank you.
Caller, please mute your device and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Zach DeClegian, a resident of Villa Verde Ridge and the chairman of the Architectural Committee. I'm calling in opposition of the unlimited grading changes that are suggested for SB 11 in our neighborhood. Since this process started last year, the city has not been transparent about their dealings in this matter, and some of council members have been less than helpful, further refusing to meet with homeowner association to discuss this matter. Of course, that has something to do with a $3,000 donation that Councilman Weber received from Mr. John Began, and for that, he should recuse himself as it constitutes a conflict of interest. I'm not certain how Councilman Weber is going to convince his constituents that he has been unbiased when his vote was paid for. Unfortunately, there will be legal ramifications and costs associated with this decision, and the association has incurred, and this cost will be paid by all 262 homes in our HOA, and not the 29. It is very unfortunate, however, the truth. Mention of litigation has already started from Monte Vista due to the unreasonable demands of one person who donated $3,000, and that is extremely unfair. This is why today I call on all HOA associations in the city of San Dimas to help me build a coalition to fight unfair practices that our city council is taking and the unneeded costs that they are imposing, costs that should be passed to the city as they brought this issue to our doorstep. Finally, this issue is not about 29 homes. Our association is made up of 262 homes and not 29. As a board, we do our best every day to do what is fair for all 262 and not only 29. Thank you for your attention and time this evening.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
My name is Guy Christensen. I live on 1508 Cali Christina. I had purchased my lot in 1986. I went through 4 years of hell just trying to get the plans approved to build my house. When I bought the lot, my neighbor was complaining about gophers. He was complaining about weeds. I said, give me a chance to build a house and then complain. My house is 1508, which is the first track house as you walk into the custom home area. When I built the house, they had regulations on how much dirt I can move. And I had the next door neighbor that has all kinds of gophers, all kinds of wildlife that I never built on because of the restrictions of the dirt. I can see Mr. Enderly talking about 200 and some people, but we're talking about 29 custom homes that weren't built to be allowed to have pools that you can go right outside your porch and enjoy it. So I guess these lots that were custom made were probably the ones left over that you had to have more than 200 feet of dirt to move to make them creative. I have a lot for 30 plus years right next to me that's empty that maybe somebody would have bought if they had some better regulations. It took me 4 to 5 years just to go through your planning commission from 86 to 90 to start building my house. I was the 5th house built up here. Some of these rules that you got have to go away. It just can't keep on going like this
because there's 7 lots that aren't built because people can't build them on these situations with these rules. Somewhere down the line, yes, you got 252 houses, but we shared the least amount of participation by this homeowners association that takes care of everything outside our area, and everything inside our area we take care of. I don't have no dedicated association property that is being taken care of. So I appreciate you guys to change this rule so these people can go on with their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
And everything inside our area we take care
Thank you
of.
for calling. Please mute your device, state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Jan Bartolo, and I'm calling tonight as an original homeowner in Villa Verde Ridge and to speak to you regarding the proposed changes to SB 11 and my opposition to it. A specific plan is supposed to contain developmental standards as it pertains to a geographical area, amongst other purposes. It is clear that none of the proposed changes listed in the staff report are in concurrence with the existing Villa Verde Homeowners Association, CCNRs, and the spirit of which they were intended. The initial goal of the development was to have the houses fit in with the existing natural hillside, its landscape, and nestled into the topography as opposing to dominate it. Developments on hillsides can often be costly and potentially create unstable cuts, leaving the hillside with scarring or instability. Oftentimes, the hillside can suffer with due to the steepness, resulting in erosion, drainage, possible landslides, or other problems. Furthermore, the view sheds can be impeded or compromised for the surrounding neighbors, depending if, in fact, the property is built out to potentially a zero lot line, or if structures have to be supported with any sort of caissons, cantilevered support, or any other extra type of support. It would make sense that the city work in tandem with the Villa Verde Homeowners Association to achieve what is best for both the city and the property owners, with the end result being development that is environmentally friendly, aesthetically pleasing, and also done in a safe and effective manner. For the past few decades, the Homeowners Association Architectural Review Committee, the city's DPRB board, and the city staff have appeared to work collaboratively in review and approval of proposed architectural development plans for the custom lots. To have the City Council consider modifying the specific plan without meeting with the Villa Verde Homeowners Association Board of Directors, I think, is presumptuous and ill-advised, as changes to the specific plan could ultimately create a conflict with the Homeowners Association, CCNRs, thereby inadvertently creating potentially problematic matters on down the road for both entities. Furthermore, I would like to request Councilman Weber consider recusing himself from discussion on this item due to a campaign contribution received that could be perceived as a conflict of interest. Before the City Council takes any action this evening, I would like to request and suggest that they direct staff to meet with representatives, the president, or all members of the Homeowners Association's Board of Directors, possibly the Architectural Review Committee members, and establish consistent and cohesive development standards so that we may ultimately have something acceptable to and all within not only our development, Villa Verde Ridge, but also our community. I'd like to thank you very much for your time on this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening. My name is Betty Jean Lamb, and I am a resident of SP 11 in Villa Verde. At one point in time, and I maybe still am an alternate on the Homeowners Association Architectural Committee, and I was on that committee and one of the people that approved the blueprints for the original main house at 1539 Calle Christina. The reason I'm calling tonight, of course, is to request that City Council stand down and vote to leave the municipal code text regarding grading for Planning Area 1 unchanged. I sent you my comments in an email letter yesterday, which I hope you have or will read and take under advisement when you carefully consider the long-term consequences of your vote. I have included references to what those potential consequences might be in terms of the results of catastrophic landslides caused by development on filled or unstable hillsides. In the short term, our HOA appears to me to be between a rock and a hard place. The Homeowners Association continues to support their position that they will make no changes to the CC&R's grading allowance. Council and the custom homeowners continue to push for change, and another homeowner has put the HOA on notice that they will sue the Homeowners Association if it changes the grading allowance in the CC&Rs. Now, this is a very difficult decision you have to make, but forcing the issue by changing the code on the city level when the Homeowners Association objects, I don't think is going to solve the problem. I again request City Council to back off, vote for no change to the grading allowance, and let the Homeowners Association do its job. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, everyone. I was looking at the issues that are presented tonight, and there are several issues with this, I guess, an HOA problem. I'd like to know who presented this for consideration after it was voted against 5-0 by the area HOA. When the residents bought in this area, they signed CC&Rs and bylaws knowing what the procedures, the recommendations, and the guidelines are for the property or the home that they're purchasing. If we allow residents to come to the city to circumvent their HOA after the HOA votes an issue down, we're setting a very dangerous precedent in the area. That means that you've taken away the governing body's authority and power when the residents can just go straight to the city and have their issues heard in this way. It's kind of suspect to me why this issue is being presented to the city, but after hearing some of the calls this evening, I understand that there was a major campaign contribution made to one of the city council people, and we have discussed before that there have been other projects by one of the developers that live in this area. It sounds, after listening to the people tonight, that they may have buyer's remorse, that even knowing what they were needed to do on these properties and what their recommendations were, they've decided that living on a hill isn't as productive or as beneficial as they thought, and now they're having issues dealing with some of the landscaping issues and some of the wildlife in the area, which in San Dimas we all do. And it's not that they couldn't have operated on the areas that they purchased. It seems as if they want to overbuild for the areas that they purchased. And it seems to be a dangerous precedent being set not over for the overbuild of the area, but also circumventing the HOA and going directly to the city. And I'm asking now, if now that they've circumvented the governing powers and gone straight to the city, is the city now representing the developer and these people on their behalf? The process seems to be a little skewed, so I'm kind of confused. And I'm very concerned about how other HOAs are going to operate now after this, if this is something that they vote for. I think this is a dangerous thing to consider in that it just sets a very bad tone. And if you do it in this area, you will probably have to do it in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, Mr. Sorry. Let me, because I hear some echoing from the other room. So, this is Janine Bremer. First of all, I know that you guys are not allowed to answer questions. However, I hope that you would indulge me in answering two. The first one is, can you hear me? Because last time I sounded like gobbledygook.
Yes, Janine, we can hear you.
Fabulous. So I wanted to call regarding my concern about the safety of the intersection of Gladstone and San Dimas. San Dimas Avenue, not San Dimas Canyon. We just witnessed our second car accident there in less than a month. It's probably been 2 weeks since the last one. I mean, it's pretty bad when my husband and I actually have reflective jackets on the ready to help kind of direct traffic so no one gets hit until our wonderful sheriff and fire department get there. And I have to have a huge shout out to them because they're always super duper fast in responding to these accidents. However, it is a reoccurring theme and something that, especially as the Gold Line is coming in and further traffic will be coming, we really need to consider adding the left-hand turn signals for all of those directions, north, south, east, west. My question is it a matter of just contacting Sherry, or is there another thing that I need to do as far as that process? And that's my question. I don't know if you're able to answer that.
Just contact Sherry, or we'll ask Sherry to contact you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
My name is Ronald. I'm calling on behalf of the HOA Villa Verde issue. First, I'll try to get into brass tacks and apologize for my poor presentation. But caveat emptor, buyer beware. Many of the people that bought up there on those lots knew the limitations at the time, signed their CC&Rs, and moved in and built anyhow. I live on one of the lower lots adjacent to Calle Cristina. I knew what I was buying when I signed the CC&Rs. I got a stable lot, one that was flat, and one that I could possibly build a pool. Because I don't live on Calle Cristina, I don't have a view. I measured both what I wanted and chose the tract home down below. Signed my CC&Rs, knew what I was getting into. The people above, they are complaining about having to walk steps and such. Well, on my small lot, I'm in a 2-story building. When I get old, I don't know how I'm going to get up my stairs either. Caveat emptor. I also find it ironic that the city went ahead and approved this or contemplated it all without confronting or consulting the HOA. I've gone into City Hall a few times regarding some minor cosmetic issues I was contemplating doing in my house, and the city told me we can't issue a permit without the HOA approving it first. So apparently the city got it backwards on this one. They need to talk to the HOA and listen to what we have to say. There are 29 up there who went from 200 cubic feet, now unlimited. It bears a direct issue for me living below.
the term beautify was considered. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I've already had to deal with Calle Christina residents illegally not cutting down trees on the scenic easement, as well as building without permits or without consulting HOA. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder. A giant McMansion on top of a hill is not beauty to me and compromises my safety and my investment in my home, while at the same time allowing them the beauty of their pocketbooks to be expanded at my expense. We all signed up for something. We knew the rules. Follow the rules. Plain and simple. Rule of law. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
That's it. Bye-bye.
Next.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
My name is Lou Karen. I live directly below the homes in question. In fact, I live directly below the new home being constructed. The changes to any form of unlimited grading will likely impact the properties below, including ours. We bought our house 30 years ago, largely because of the wildlife and the natural habitat around us, the trees, the coyotes, the hawks, the whole ball of wax. Grading that will likely have an environmental impact that will degrade our property value and put us in a position where looking out our back windows and our yard will look directly up into a series of homes that believe they should drop the trees that have been there for years so they can see Mount Baldy. We signed, as said by the previous individual, we all signed the CC&Rs when we began. There are, when we made our purchases, we all had the chance to do the due diligence. In fact, I did the due diligence by driving the ridge before I bought my house and looked at the properties and the trees and what couldn't be built before I made my decision. Mr. Prada is an attorney. He knows the law. He had the chance to look at it. I can appreciate his issues with the property next to him, but those below us have the same values, same rights, and same desire to have our beauty retained. So I would hope that the council will not only protect and look to those above, but look to those below us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Mayor and council members, my name is Anita Brady.
Ma'am, can you please mute your device?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
now.
Okay. My name is Anita Brady, and I live at 113 South Grinnell Avenue. I think it's upstairs.
Miss Brady, we can't hear you now.
Let's try this. Can you go to the next call and come back?
Mute your computer speakers.
I am muted on the Zoom.
You're possibly your actual
Okay,
speakers.
I'll step this way. Okay. Okay. My name is Anita Brady, and I live at 113 South Grinnell Avenue in San Dimas, California. I think it's very unfair that a small percentage of property owners, less than 1/100 of 1%, to have grading restrictions on their properties when others do not. Why should their hillside properties be singled out and treated any differently than the hundreds, maybe thousands of other hillside properties here in San Dimas that do not have these restrictions? I think you should treat all these homeowners property owners equally and fairly. The property owners in specific Plan 11, Area 1, all have beautiful homes, and I'm sure they have paid more than their fair share of building permit fees and property taxes to help support the city. This is not how you attract new residents or growth in San Dimas, by not being fair and equitable to all residents and property owners. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Nadia, and I'm calling in opposition to SB 11. I feel like it is unfair to treat a few members of a certain HOA within the Villa Verde community, give them special preference over the thousands of homes that are in the Villa Verde area. We own property in another HOA within Villa Verde, and we want to do improvements, but we know the rules that we signed on for when we bought our property several years ago. I do not wish to drive down Capina Hills Road and see large retaining walls, protruding decks. That area has been harmonious and part of an environmental green belt for several years. I am also very concerned about the grading issues and the degrading of the hillsides and the erosion and possible landslides onto Capina Hills Road. I travel that virtually every day, and I want it to be safe. I don't know what happens if the grading and drainage aren't properly addressed. Furthermore, I think it's unfair and premature that the City Council is being asked to vote on something when they haven't even gone to the Homeowners Association and talked to them and looked at plans. We're putting the cart before the horse here. We really need to take a step back and let the Homeowners Association do their job. There's no reason to open up potential litigation for all the other associations within Villa Verde. And I think that another topic is the council member that did receive a donation from the speculation property owner needs to recuse himself from discussion and voting on this matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Nardine Solis, and I live on 1609 Calle Christina, and we have lived here since 2019. We haven't really lived here as long as other neighbors. However, this is our forever home. I am in support with the unlimited grading. We have less than 200 feet of grass in my backyard, and it dips down, which has been very extremely dangerous for my active 4.5-year-old son. My child is not allowed to go outside in the backyard without any adult supervision, nor he can actually play outside since he is at risk of falling down. We also have a 10-year-old yellow Labrador who has been suffering from severe arthritis and bone remodeling. He has repeatedly went down the hill and got stuck, and I had to actually leave him down there until to get help to get him back up. He is over 90 pounds and very hard to push a heavy dog up that hill. My child and my dog would really appreciate it if the restrictions be lifted and we are able to build a little playground for my son and his dog, where he can play with his toys and his cars. We would really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Hello, good evening. My name is John Crow. I live on Calle Cecilia in San Dimas. I'm a member of the Villa Verde Homeowners Association, and I'm calling tonight regarding my concern over the discussion regarding the grading rules in the Villa Verde Homeowners Association lots. I'm opposed to changes in the 40-year-old policy that was adopted by the city about 4 decades ago and has served us well. My concerns, first of all, revolve around the homes on Esperanza below. This is a very unstable area, an area prone to earthquakes and erosions, and I'm concerned about expansion in the custom lots that will infringe upon my neighbors down in the Esperanza area. Second of all, I'm concerned about this issue dividing our homeowners association. I'm concerned about assessments of $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for legal fees that we will face, and really concerned about the loss to the city if the homeowners association has to fold, as some others have done here, because of this issue where residents want to change the grading rules. Thank you for your time. Good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for calling. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
This is Gil Gonzalez, and let me turn this thing off. Sorry, I apologize. Are you going to allow comments on this item, other business, in regards to this change?
No, Mr.
Hello?
Gonzalez, this is the only public comment period.
Okay, I'm ready to open then. I don't like the barriers sometimes of laws or people's opinions. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. It's always what is beneficial to the community. Now, people did move in there. There were CC&Rs. Now, my question is, does the state or the county or the city require that CC&Rs be approved? If they were approved with the track map or anything else, then the city was part of the development that allowed that. Now, the question is, because I live in a place where there's CC&Rs, but there's no HOA. I cannot take anybody to court or do anything unless I do it on my own, okay? So I would appreciate during that time that you talk about the legality of the CC&Rs. We don't have an HOA. They have an HOA. So now does the HOA take responsibility for the enforcement, or does the city? The city, if the city, if the people out in the city are listening to this, you're getting a perfect example of how this city operates. Okay? There's council members that go back and talk to the staff without talking to the city manager. Period. I can't believe that. You can't tell me that Mr. Vienna and Mr. Weber did not go behind the counter and talk to somebody in there, and it sounds just like Vienna. I mean, he had a guy from Butter when the guy was a problem with the parking. He brought the CERT people, and that's all he ran out. I don't know what Weber's going to do, but this is a perfect problem of what the city is going through. And I see that the anger and the upsetness between these barriers is not creating an amiable connection. I just don't know what to say. I don't see why the city should get in the middle of this. They wrote the rules. Those are the rules. Apparently, we allowed a HOA. I don't know what your procedure is for allowing a HOA, but this is between the HOA and the people. Okay, this guy's an attorney. I never met him before. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me to have 4 lawyers here and not know what to do other than bribe somebody. I mean, that's the legal right. And Mr. Vienna, talk about it. 1 minute or 2 minutes?
No, Mr. Gonzalez, your time has expired.
Thank you. I appreciate you staying later than 30 minutes. I hope you get the point. This is a problem that the city has. I wouldn't vote for any incumbent.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, we don't have any more callers at this time, but if you allow us a 2-minute delay, 2-minute wait for the TV delay.
We'll allow 1 minute.
1 minute? 1 minute. Can you change it to 1?
Okay, John, let's move on to Zoom.
Okay. We are not taking oral communications for those who are joining us through Zoom. If you wish to take part in oral communications and are joining us by internet device, please locate the Zoom raise hand feature and click on the hand icon. For those who dialed into Zoom, press star 9 on your phone now to raise the hand feature in Zoom. You will be identified by your screen name for internet device and the last 4 digits of caller ID for dialed-in participants. Participants will be called upon one at a time in the order the hand was raised. When called upon, please unmute. To unmute from an internet device, click the microphone button at the bottom. From a phone, press star 6. Screen name, Keith B. It is your turn to speak. Please unmute your microphone, state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name's Keith Buck. I live on 4th Street, and my wife and I have been residents of San Dimas for nearly 25 years now. Since I don't live in the Villa Verde section of town, I don't have a direct interest on the item and the agenda involving the grading there, but would like to give my input. I appreciate the work city staff did in giving City Council so much detail around the issue and how other cities have handled similar questions. That said, I hope that this council will consider what's best for San Dimas and not be too influenced by the choices that other cities have made. Personally speaking, I believe option number 3, the percentage-based grading, would be a good compromise. I would not like to see unlimited grading, and I don't believe that is unfair to those owners of the land who purchased it under the current limitations. I wanted to point out, I think there was a minor typo on the memo from staff in referring to the petition from property owners within SP 11. In the final paragraph, the memo referred to option 3 as unlimited grading, but I believe that option was actually for percentage grading. Finally, I know from a previous council meeting that the city council said that it was not a conflict, or the city attorney said that it was not a conflict of interest for a council member to participate in this decision, despite having received a significant amount of campaign funding from someone personally interested in the issue and in other related parties. But I hope the council members will err on the side of caution with regard to recusing themselves should they have such a relationship. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Next, participant Sean C. It is your turn to speak. Please unmute your microphone, state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, City Council and members of the audience. I want to update everyone on the state legislature in regards to the housing zoning bills. The last update on SB 9 housing development approvals was on March 3rd, 2021, where the author, it doesn't state which author, requested the March 18th first hearing on the bill to be canceled. I'll keep tabs on this bill. The last update on SB 10 planning and zoning housing development density was on February 24th, 2021, where a hearing will be set for March 18th and has author's amendments read a second time and amended. This bill has been re-referred to Committee on Housing. I wrote a piece entitled Meet the Advocates for AstroTurf Affordable Housing about both Senator Atkins and Scott Wiener. These two have been behind a lot of these quote-unquote trickle-down housing bills, to borrow a term from San Francisco Supervisor Gordon Marr. These pieces of legislation won't help solve the housing homelessness crisis, but will only exacerbate the crisis by just deregulating our zoning laws in order to give way to not just big developers, but also, while delving into this rabbit hole, big tech and investing on their bottom line. You can view this piece on the city's website under February 23rd, 2021, public comment, email under agenda and minutes. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, participant John D. It is your turn to speak. Please unmute your microphone, state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Sure, thank you. This is John Davis, member of San Dimas Planning Commission, but I'm not speaking as a member of San Dimas Planning Commission. I'm speaking as a resident of SB 11. I would appreciate the council considering increasing the cubic yardage allowed in SP 11. I believe personally that the 200 cubic yards is very limiting, and that there is obviously a need for an increase. Unlimited grading sounds sounds difficult for people to comprehend. That unlimited grading would be good for the city, but there is certainly a number that would be appropriate to allow the homeowners to increase the utilization of their backyard. So I, as Keith had stated, thought the staff had done a very good job of analyzing the issue. I think the members of the city council should increase the cubic yardage and pick a number that would make the residents of San Dimas feel comfortable, but also allow the residents of SP 11 to reasonably develop their home site. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Next, participant Mike L. It is your turn to speak. Please unmute your microphone, state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, good evening. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, hi. My name is Mike Liu. I live in 1538 Calle Cristina. So I would say I'm one of the prime lots affected by this. And I'm definitely for increasing the possible grading zone or grading limit in our lots. And honestly, I think I'm probably the youngest. I'm probably newest resident here, actually. I just moved in about 6 months ago. But listening to all this, I think, maybe if I can offer kind of a viewpoint or opinion from someone who's not so politically attached or emotionally attached to all of this, I think what it really comes down to, everyone, is just if you come up to our street and you look at, the backyards of these properties, it's just it's dangerous. Some of them are frankly just, in dangerous situations and have dangerous compromises that were, when the houses were built because of these limitations. And I get it. No one wants to live in a concrete jungle out here. I absolutely understand the concerns of the people against it. But at the end of the day, I think the owners up here, and you can tell by the homes and you can tell by the owners if you just come up here and meet people, everyone's just trying to make the hill or the city as well, a more beautiful place. No one's asking to put in, like a ridiculous nightclub or anything. No, there's no ridiculous requests. And even then, even after this, if this zoning limit were changed, we still have to go through all the proper, channels and permits and everything else to get things built. It's not like we can just do whatever we want, right? I think people are getting kind of that mixed up if they've never built something before. It's just really asking, for the people who are affected here, it's giving us options and kind of, hope that we can change things that maybe were, made sense 20, 40 years ago when this law was made, but clearly is outdated now. And that's okay. Things change. And I think a lot of the argument around this now tonight is, honestly speaking, sounding kind of relevant to me and kind of politically charged. I think there's some, hidden agendas on all sides. And at the end of the day, I think the people who are really affected by it, the owners on this street, are the ones who are just going to suffer for it, which is really unfortunate. That, I'm hoping if a young person like me can see it, that the city members and everyone listening can find it in their hearts to also kind of put all that stuff aside and just kind of think a moment, for what's best for the city and the homeowners here. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Mayor, that is all the Zoom
That's it?
participants.
Okay. Consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless a member of the City Council requests separate discussion.
Move approval.
Okay, I understand that we have two resolutions. Madam City Clerk, would you read them by resolution?
Resolution 2021-12, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Dimas, County of Los Angeles, ordering the city engineer to proceed with the preparation of a report for the annual levy of assessments for Open Space Maintenance District Number 1, Tract Number 32818 Boulevard.
Do I have a motion?
Resolution 2021-13, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Dimas, County of Los Angeles, ordering the city engineer to proceed with the preparation of a report for the annual levy of assessments for Open Space Maintenance District Number 1, Annexation Number 3, Tract Number 32841, Northwoods.
Waive further reading.
Second. Do we have to take a vote on each one individually?
No.
Okay.
Right. The whole consent calendar at once.
All right. Would you?
I did. And
then second it by Dennis?
Councilmember Bertone, second.
And would you read the roll call, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. Point of order. I think there's one more resolution. I believe 2021-11. Is that the other one?
Oh, the warrant register. Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a vote on this one first.
No, they're all consent.
Okay.
Resolution 2021-11, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Dimas, California, approving certain demands for the months of February and March 2021.
All right, waive further reading. Introduce.
All in favor?
Aye.
She's got to read.
Yeah, sorry. Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Bertone?
Yes.
Councilmember Ebner?
Aye.
Councilmember Viana?
Aye.
Councilmember Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Bedar?
Aye.
The vote carries by 5-0 vote. 5-0.
Okay. Moving on to other business, Municipal Code Text Amendment 20-12 2022-0005, amendment to the grading limits within specific plan 11, planning area 1. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will start off by giving it to Mr. Ken Fickleman, the assistant planner on this project, and then after his presentation, I will do a little summary introduction and then pass it back to the council for discussion.
Hey, Mayor and Councilman, we're back here today to talk about Municipal Code Text Amendment 20-0005, grading limits within specific Plan 11, Planning Area 1. We'll keep this brief tonight since this is just an overview and you've already seen the information before. The first is just an aerial of the entirety of SP 11. Planning Area 1 would be the section towards the western edge of that map. As previously discussed, all the properties within Planning Area 1 of SP 11 do have an open space easement, or I'm sorry, nearly all the properties in SP 11 have an open space easement across the rear. This map shows the open space easement as the green and the actual buildable lot as the white. So discussion, currently the city allows for the additional 200 cubic yards of grading beyond the amount needed for the residence and driveway. So any grading for the residence, the driveway, or the garage would not be counted towards the 200 yards. We still offer unlimited grading for that. The grading required for a pool and a 5-foot perimeter deck is also not counted against the 200-yard grading limit. And just to kind of, for your recollection, we do have the diagram at the bottom kind of just giving you a little context as to what a cubic yard is. The one next to the man is just a single cubic yard. And at the bottom there, towards the right, it's 250 cubic yards versus a man and 500 cubic yards versus a truck. So as previously discussed, we have offered 4 options for the City Council. Option 1 would just be to codify the 200 cubic yards allowed by current DPRB policy and exempt the grading needed for a pool and a 5-foot deck around the pool.
Can I ask you a question at this point about option number 1? That's presently what's in effect now. I guess I'm totally confused. Do you have to build a pool at the ground level or at the level let's say the first floor?
You could build a pool wherever you wanted to on your lot. We don't regulate that. The grading beneath the pool that's what would be dependent on where you place the pool. So you could do it at ground level, you could do it even with your first floor, you could step down 20 feet below the level of your house to reduce the amount of grading. Any of those would be acceptable.
Could you build it at the level of the house?
You could.
So that would mean that you would have to import a lot of the soil, right? More than 200.
Possibly, depending on the lot. Each of the individual lots is a little different. Some would require almost no extra fill or cut. Some would require quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, Ken, just I recall at the last meeting, as this item was continued, that I think Councilman Weber brought up or pointed out or asked where in municipal code this was, and I don't believe this is codified anywhere in our municipal code. Is that correct?
Correct. It was a DPRB policy that was set in 1987.
Okay, so this is a policy, but there currently is no code that exists regulating this matter, correct?
There is code that regulates this. The code calls for no additional grading.
The code calls for no additional grading.
So the DPRB policy was actually giving residents or developers another 200 square feet or cubic yards they could use in their rear yard.
And it sounds like that potentially was then in violation of code.
It was directly in conflict with the code, yes.
So in plain English, does that mean that all of the homes that are up there that have had grading to this point are in violation of the city's code?
I could not answer to all of them. There are quite a few that have used the DPRB exemption.
Okay. Thank you.
Would those only be up on Calle Cristina, or is there other places within that homeowners association that probably would affect?
It's the 2 streets up there. So it's Calle Cristina. Yeah, and then Paseo Lucinda, which is at the end of Calle Cristina.
All right, just to make sure I understand what Councilman Viana was saying, every home that's up there that's done any additional grading of 200 or of any grading, because there is in violation of the municipal code.
They are in conflict with the municipal code, yes.
Pardon me. So that would also mean if the city approved it and or the homeowners association approved them, they were both wrong.
The city wasn't wrong because they were going by a policy. The policy maybe should not have been made because it did not go through the proper channels, but staff was acting upon the information that was given to them and the policy that was given to them.
Well, it seems to me that, in my experience, my brief experience here on the council, that anytime we find that someone may be in violation of the code, that typically the consequence is that we give them a notice, we go inspect it, and the city would be within its right to require them to tear it down. I mean, that is something we have pursued in the past if there weren't remedies, correct?
That would be a different circumstance, though. The city would not go after something that was legally permitted unless it was built not to plan and go for that remedy. In this case, as far as we know, everything that was built was legally permitted. It was staff in the city that was using the policies, so we would not punish the residents for that.
Right, well, I absolutely agree with that point, but I'm just trying to understand that as of now, all of those decisions were in violation of the municipal code, regardless.
Correct.
The bottom line is any decision that was made, as the mayor pointed out, by the HOA or by the city was in violation and is in violation of the city's municipal code since we've embarked on this journey that has brought this revelation forward.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, and then one additional thing, just want to clarify it for my mind before we go forward. Okay, the CC&Rs are silent on the side of the homeowners association concerning grading, and the city has taken on the grading approval process.
Yes, the CC&Rs actually refer back to the municipal code. We did originally, the last meeting, there were pages that were inadvertently inserted into our copy of the CC&R. CC&Rs were actually pages of the municipal code. We did not at that time catch that. But the CC&Rs refer back to the municipal code and call for any work done up there to follow the municipal code.
So the CC&Rs are still silent concerning the authority given by the HOA to allow grading or not allow it. It's totally up to the city.
It is silent on the actual grading limits. It does still give them some architectural, some power as far as regulating architectural and placement.
Okay, thank you.
And just to, I think, what the mayor's talking about, for clarity in my mind, in my mind, there's federal law, and then we have like state law, right? And state law can be no less restrictive than federal law. So in this instance, if you went with that construct, that the city's municipal code is like federal law, and then the HOA is basically cannot be any less restrictive than the municipal code, but in fact can be more restrictive, correct?
Correct.
So in other words, if the city, as this epiphany has come to light, that all of these homes that have had grading done in the past pursuant to the DPRB decision or what have you that are in conflict with the municipal code that are currently non-compliant, if the council remedied that tonight and brought those homes that are non-compliant with the city's municipal code tonight as we sit here, nothing precludes the HOA from being more restrictive against those homeowners should they so choose. But that is a posturing of the HOA for matters specifically within the jurisdiction of the HOA. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ken, this is John. We got a question for you. So is the DPRB mentioned at all in the SP11 SP11 zone?
I don't believe so. Well,
No.
yes and no, because it does refer that certain additions, like a house, would still have to go through DPRB. Is that in the actual SP11 code text, or is that just DPRB?
It is not specifically called out as DPRB in the CCNRs.
So I'm just wondering, since this specific plan was adopted in 1983, and then the DPRB, of course, got the various house plans, and I assume those all went through the proper channels. I don't know for sure, but it'd be good to know. Maybe the homeowners association could tell us whether at those times house plans went through the HOA first and then to the staff, or what the process was. We've been told that they should have gone to the HOA, so let's just think they might have done that. And then they got to the city hall, and besides planning staff and everything, one of the first stops for a decision to move forward is the DPRB. And have we looked to see what the DPRB discussions were that led to the 200 extra cubic yards? And the reason I asked that is because in 1987, they adopted a policy saying, well, we're just going to allow 200 cubic yards. What I think could have happened, and I'm just guessing, but that's why we should check into it, is that they were routinely allowing the extra 200 cubic yards. That's what I bet. And so it was, you know how that goes. It was probably, they were discussing it a lot the first few times, but then as time went on, they probably said, we're always doing 200 cubic yards, so let's just put it in our policy. And from that point forward, that's what was allowed. So I'm just wondering if we know anything about the DPRB's mindset, or how the city, as Ryan and Emmett are wondering, how the city started allowing the 200 cubic yards.
We don't actually know the exact reason why the DPRB started to allow it. We did look for the minutes. The minutes for that meeting could not be found. So all we have from that meeting is the policy itself, which does not explain the reasoning behind the policy.
The current DPRB minutes are pretty detailed, and I appreciate that, actually. But we should probably go to some other DPRB meetings where actual houses were being approved that took advantage, or asked, or however that happened, for 200 extra cubic yards to do whatever, and see what they said. How do they justify that? Because it's a good point that if we don't allow any extra, then how do they start allowing it?
And we'd have to do more research on that. The DPRB minutes pre-1990 are a little spotty, so it's been harder to get information out of those.
I understand. I know you were still doing the report, so I'll wait on some other questions until you're finished.
And just to follow up, Councilmember Ebner, this is Henry No, Director of Community Development. The staff was following the DPRB policy that was provided by the DPRB. That wasn't something that was codified by the City Council at the time. So that's the policy that would be referred to within any house plan that went beyond that 200 cubic, or went up to that 200 cubic yards in excess for that rear yard. That's how the staff was approving those plans previously.
I totally understand, and I don't think, with that kind of policy in place, and 200 cubic yards being a somewhat reasonable amount, it's a small amount, but it can be significant, but relatively small. I don't think there was anything wrong with the city approving those houses, and I don't think any homeowner up there has to worry about us coming with a wrecking ball to take off a few square feet because they went over the 200, or they went over zero additional grading.
I don't know, John, I saw a bulldozer on your Facebook.
You like that, huh?
Were there any other questions for council at this time, or?
Oh, I do have extra questions. Were you done, Ken, with your presentation?
No, we've got 2 more slides, John. It's not much more to go.
Oh, go ahead.
So going back to our options, option 2 would have been to allow unlimited grading on a lot. Option 3 would be to allow grading limits based on the percentage of the buildable lot of an area. So if a lot was 50,000 square feet and you said, okay, we're going to allow 2% grading, that would give them 1,000 square feet or cubic yards of grading. And option 4 would be no change or increase the grading quantity to a limit that the city council deems appropriate for the area, i.e. grading would be increased to a set amount 1,000 cubic yards. Public comment, staff received a petition advocating for unlimited grading from property owners in SP 11 Planning Area 1. That was the one that Mr. Begin and others referred to earlier. I also, since this has been posted, talked to 2 other residents in the area who were against any additional grading on the phone. So with that, staff recommends that the City Council provide direction to staff regarding grading limits within SP 11 Planning Area 1, and we're here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions of Ken?
I have a quick clarification question because I think I think I've wrestled this enough and I think I figured it out, but just to clarify for myself and everybody, when we're talking about grading limitations and we say there's a limit of 200 cubic yards. That would include cut and fill. And from what I understand, let's just say on my property, I'm doing some extra gardening, and I'm moving 1 cubic yard of dirt from one portion of my yard to the other side of my yard. So by taking that 1 cubic yard and moving it over here for the purpose of the grading restrictions, that 1 cubic yard wouldn't be counted as just 1 cubic yard. That would be counted as 2 cubic yards.
If you're moving it to location to location, yes, because you're affecting 2 different parts of your property.
Okay. Right. Any other questions of Ken?
Sure.
No, I had a staff question, but go ahead, John.
I had a similar or related question. When we talk about the unlimited grading that's allowed by code for that driveway and the house, so I understand what that is, but some of the time you're going to have to create a slope of some kind so that the driveway and the house don't just drop right off into the air. So the grading or the dirt that's required to make that slope next to whatever part of the house needs it, and it'll go at 2 to 1 or whatever it does. Might be support walls, might be step down or whatever. Is that part of the unlimited grading for the house that's allowed, or are you now getting into that 200 cubic yards or whatever number of cubic yards?
If it is required for the pad, the residence, the driveway, even if it is just to shore up what would be the foundation, we would not count it as that would be part of your unlimited grading for the house.
Does staff in that case try to encourage or require that kind of grading to look natural?
We would encourage it. In the area now, there are very few kind of sheer walls because of the grading limitations put in place. While we do allow for the unlimited grading for a house, we would try to get a potential builder to work with the terrain, to work with the contours, and to minimize the look of any grading.
Right. No, and that's a good idea. And I could just see that if you made it look natural, you might naturally, so to speak, come up with more grading than would be if you made like a really steep or a really steep retaining wall, even if it stepped a little bit. You know what I'm saying? In order to look natural, instead of all of a sudden going from the rest of the property and all of a sudden it goes up at a 75-degree angle or something, to make it look natural, you might need more grading. And so my question on that is, do we allow that? And even more so, do we require that extra grading in order for the house and the terrain to look good to surrounding neighbors and the view?
The grading like you're currently talking about, because it would be in excess of what is actually needed, would count towards the 200 cubic yards.
All right. Good to know. I did have a couple other questions. One was, I mentioned this to Ken earlier on the phone today, but if you take the council chambers and you filled it with 200 cubic yards, do you have an idea about how high that would be in the council chambers?
Well, I can give you, I'd have to do some quick math because I broke it down. I know you talked to me about this, but I did break it down a little differently. 200 cubic yards would be roughly equivalent to the audience section at the back of City Hall chambers. That would be roughly 240 cubic yards would fill that area.
Filled all the way to the ceiling?
Yeah, just the audience area.
Got it. Okay.
And the entire first kind of floor of the city council chambers, not going up into the roof level above, just going up to where this wall over here cuts out, is roughly 740 cubic yards. And that takes into account the kind, yes, and that takes into account
not the
bends.
ceiling, though.
Not the ceiling, just up to this first level. Going up to where the pyramid kind of starts at the top, that would be roughly an extra 480 cubic yards. So filling this entire chamber, but not the kind of pyramid roof, because that math is beyond me at this point, would be 1,220 cubic yards.
Okay. John, any additional?
I'll let somebody else go, and then I've got a couple ending questions.
Anybody have any further questions of Ken?
Another point of clarification for me, in my understanding. So when we're talking about, let's say, 200 cubic yards of soil being brought in to shore up backyard, are we talking, each truck is 50, let's just say 50 cubic yards, we're going to allow 4 trucks of 50 cubic yards of dirt and that's it? Or are we talking finished, compacted soil? Because my understanding would be, loose dirt in the back of a truck takes up more room and more cubic yardage than compacted dirt that would be affected on a hillside.
I'm going to ask our city engineer, actually. 50%. 15. So we would give them 15% shrinkage.
So it would be basically be calculated on the finished compacted soil?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any additional? John? Dennis?
Sure, just asking, we've heard what various callers have said, but I just want to hear it from staff and what we know. Did the buyers of the property and our new buyers, like the last caller, required to sign some kind of buyer's awareness package or something that indicates that they know about the restrictions, all kinds of restrictions, whatever restrictions there are, including grading on the property?
We do have a buyer awareness package from when the lots were originally developed and sold. That was supposed to be given out to every homeowner according to the buyer awareness package. As far as what happens now, because that is a private sale, the city is not involved. We are not aware of what is actually transpiring between the buyer, the seller, and the HOA.
Yeah, so we don't know if the HOA is doing that or involved even, because I don't live in an association area like that, so I wouldn't have another party be looking at or requiring any kind of signing besides the buyer and the seller. The last question really is, so we got restrictions obviously on SB 11 Area 1. Is there any personally or privately owned property in the city that doesn't have restrictions of some kind?
I'm sorry, John, just to clarify, are you asking if there are properties that don't have any grading restrictions?
Correct. Well, not grading, any kind of restrictions.
No, every property in San Dimas has some sort of restriction on it.
Okay, so, and typically if I buy a house, I like to know where my property starts and ends and what I can do with it. Or at least a lot of people want to know that.
Yeah, so every city and every lot in San Dimas would have some sort of setback, lot coverage, building height. There are restrictions on every lot of some sort.
All right. Hey, thanks, Ken.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ken. I think we're good. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to summarize a little bit because there's a lot of different issues at play, and there is an actual recommendation from the city manager with regards to what action the council should take. What we're talking about really is a balance. There's really a balance seen here, and it relates to the extent of a property owner's right to do what they want with their property, and the extent of the city to place limitations for some public purpose through municipal code and regulations and policies, and in this specific area, additional restrictions by a homeowners association that wants to self-govern certain aspects of the properties within the association. But the issue we're facing ourselves, and part of the reason why you're going to hear a recommendation from me, is there's another balance, and it's a balance between the rule and a balance versus the practice. And we're dancing around the reality of what the situation is. Staff, decades ago, implemented a practice that conflicted with code. The code supersedes anything that DPRB can put into place in policy. DPRB cannot promulgate a regulation or policy that conflicts with the municipal code. And there's a reason for that, because the municipal code requires a text amendment that comes to council, is vetted during a public hearing, requires public input, discussion, deliberation, and approval. It's very difficult. Clearly what you heard today with the comments from the public indicate that even your discussion of this is really serious. So imagine now if this discussion was happening at DPRB and not necessarily in as bright of a public eye as it does during a council meeting. And we need to understand that staff implemented the practice of the DPRB and nobody pointed out that that violated the code. And so for decades, we proceeded to allow and grant grading in violation of the code. It was not disputed or raised. It was an issue with the HOA. And I'm not saying it was a wrong practice. I'm just saying it was in violation of the code. And so clearly the grading was intended to allow flexibility for a resident to execute more of their property right interest in developing their property. And so the recommendation that I'm making to the council is option one. Option one codifies what the council, what the city staff and city has allowed, and what it appears that the HOA has also allowed properties to develop up in planning area 1. And we need to fix that inconsistency, because I'm not one that's going to want to rip out improvements for a house that's been there for 20 years. I mean, let's try doing that and see what ends up happening. But we also have an applicant that's put an application into the city that's now being reviewed by a new community development and planning director, Henry, and a new city manager. And the two of us look to the code and look to the law to determine what we can and cannot approve. And unfortunately, for the practice over the last 3 decades, we cannot approve any grading outside of what's articulated in the code, regardless of what the DPRB approved and regardless of what the city condoned over the last 3 decades. And so we're stuck. So I don't think we have the option of taking no action. We have to take a action. We have to resolve that inconsistency in the code. Because on the one hand, you're either telling the property owners they're in violation and there's something we need to do about that and certain exposures that we take. Or on the other hand, you're telling no to a developer who then will turn around and say that you said yes to them over there. And so I believe the city's interest minimally is to approve option one, codify what we've done, and now it's completely legal and appropriate. I think in terms of the conversation of whether you engage with the HOA in some kind of change that codifies a practice that's already in place, this is the venue. This is the venue for public input for anybody and everybody. In terms of the other options, or as we look at the balance test of a property's owner's right to develop and have freedom on their property, there is a policy question that's being asked by the residents of Planning Area 1. Their desire is to have more flexibility to develop their properties, and that certain properties can't be developed in the way desired by those residents, so they're asking the council for unlimited grading. Now, I'm presuming that when we say unlimited grading, we're not saying I want to eliminate the entire mountainside. But I think it's an expression that each property is unique, and we want ability to maximize our flexibility on the unique aspects of our property. So if we say unlimited, it doesn't result in everybody being able to do what they need to except one property, because we didn't consider some unique topography, soil dynamic, slope, or something for that property. And so the council is going to have to grapple with, I think two different issues. One is codifying what we've been doing for the last 30 plus years, because staff will not, under my leadership, direct and approve something that's in violation of code until it's changed and then it's in compliance. And then secondly, do you consider or entertain the request from residents there of a change? In terms of public input, we mentioned on the slide presentation that it makes it appear that this was allowed or practiced, but we need to make very clear it was done in violation of the code, and we've just been doing it for a long time. But just like any law, you can pass a law, run with it, and until somebody calls you on it, it's not illegal. But when they call you on it, you're now dealing with the repercussions of that law, and that's exactly similar to what we're doing here. When we look to the HOAs, CC&Rs, there's a whole host of other issues that come up here. Collaborative working towards a goal is ideal. You want to get everybody at the table that's impacted. Property owners, groups like the HOA, the city, staff, the whole 9 yards. I mean, that if you could do that on everything, that would be ideal, but we know we can never do that on everything. And so part of the process why you're not seeing a first reading of a municipal text code amendment, and this is in the form of a study session a little bit, but not quite a study session, was intended to garner that input to give the city council the ability to let us know what more you want us to do to present a recommendation to you. But the CC&Rs are very clear. There's a hierarchy of laws and rules. And that hierarchy, at the top of that hierarchy, or higher up than anything else that's in the CC&Rs, is the municipal code. There's also a requirement that the HOA review architectural aspects of the developments. But nothing in that connects to that says that approval and review has to happen first before it goes to the city for review. And that has been the practice, and I can't say it's been the practice on every case, but for the most part, the HOA is reviewed first and either stamped or given some kind of approval that it complies with the CC&Rs. The city's been able to take that and then process that, and once it's processed, the developer is off to the races. And I'm not saying that's a bad practice. I'm just saying that's the practice, not necessarily what the rule states or the law says that's the process. There's nothing that I can find in our code that gives us the authority to reject somebody coming directly to us without going through an HOA. So when a developer or an applicant comes to us and says, I want to do grading in SP 11 Project Area 1, we have to accept that application and then review it. We can't just reject it and deny it because you didn't go to the HOA first, because there's nothing that's codified that allows that. Now there's another issue that comes up when we talk about the chicken and the egg. Does it go to the HOA or does it come to the city first? The HOA can be more restrictive than the city. So if you come to the city and the city processes an application and we say green light for you, you are still required to get under the CC&R's approval from the HOA's architectural committee. So now if the architectural committee denies your project and you go through the appeal process in the CC&Rs, then you're denied. It doesn't matter that you have a city approval, you can't construct, you can't build. And if you do construct or build, the HOA has remedies to stop or address that from occurring. And so those are two separate processes. But if we follow the premise that we should go first to the HOA and then to the city, I will direct you to another section of the CC&R that has a timeline of construction that relates to an approval from the architectural committee of the CC&Rs. What is written is, once you receive approval from the HOA's committee, you have 90 days to begin construction or any other time period that would be allowed. Well, I just asked Henry, what's a typical process if somebody came to the city? What's the timeline for us to approve when you have to go through all the layers and whatnot? And he said on average it's over 6 months. So now imagine, I go to the HOA and they give me the green light, and then I file my paperwork with the city. you're probably not going to get out within 180 days. So if the CCNR say 90 days, you have to do it within 90 days or you can't do it. Then the quandary is, unless they are constantly allocating an unlimited period of time, you're going to run up against violating the CCNRs and now can't construct because you went there first and not the city. And so I think there's a whole host of issues and confusion on this that is impacting the city, the homeowners association, the residents that are being impacted in Project Area 1, and other interested residents on the matter. So I think we need to really look at this from the perspective of the original balance test that I mentioned. The property owner's ability to utilize their property, and the restrictions that we want to put into place for whatever public purpose we have to say you can do things, but you can't do more than this. And so officially we're asking that you approve option 1, and if you're desirous to do anything other than option 1, to please express that to us, and then we will, and give us that direction, and then we will come forth with whatever action is necessary to do so.
I ask about the HOAs.
What, John?
Chris, I was wondering, Chris, are not the HOAs required in some cases in the zoning when you create a specific plan or any kind of zoning for an area? Like in this case, is the HOA required, or how did that even come about?
An HOA is not required in our code for a development.
Well, I don't mean that. I mean in SP 11. Does it require an HOA?
I've gone through Title 18, that section related to SP 11, and I see no reference to a homeowners association.
How does that come up? I wonder how a homeowners association is created then. Maybe the original developer created it? I'm just wondering.
I think in this case, when we go back to the CCNRs and we look at the parties involved. The city is a party involved because you're conveying restrictions on property. But in this case, I'm almost there. May 23rd, 1984, J.M. Peters Company, a California corporation, which I presume was the original developer in the project. But I wasn't here at the time, so I can't confirm that. And sometimes, and I've seen this in other communities, there are restrictions on every property, to Councilmember Ebner's point. I mean, obvious ones like setbacks and whatnot. And if we were building in a flat land that had no environmental constraints, no objections, and I wanted to build 300 single-family homes in an area that everybody wants 300 single-family homes, there's really no need to add additional restrictions to that development. But what we're looking here is building in an area that has a high level of sensitivity, viewshed restrictions that were placed. So clearly there's a whole host of other concerns that were probably being addressed in the 5 planning areas of SP 11. And so if for the developer, as in other communities, to be able to bring a project to the city to get staff to buy off on it, planning commission to approve it, and the council to then finalize and approve that subdivision, I'm going to have to compromise in a number of different ways. And I would imagine the potential was putting an HOA with restrictions and CCNRs and self-governance may have been something that was needed to have that be a final approval that made it through the city. And that's what I would suspect would have occurred, because I've seen it happen time and time again in other developments. And so now we are decades later, and so the concerns that may have been in place at the time then may not necessarily be concerns that are here today with the current council and leadership. And so this is why you see changes to CCNRs, changes to code. Changes to code don't necessarily mean that previous code goes away. If you had it before, it's legal non-conforming, and then you continue to proceed with the code change. But again, come back to it's complex. It's not as straightforward as I think what I'm hearing the discussion centering around.
Is there anything in SP 11, Planning Area 1, back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, had some limitation on the size of the homes or anything like that?
There was I believe, a minimum 2,000 square foot home size restriction.
Okay, so
Minimum,
now
not maximum.
Now our 4,000 and 5,000 square foot are the norm. So,
Chris, did I know a member of the public earlier? I think it was a board member from the Via Verde Ridge Association. It stated that the city and staff never met with them. Did any city staff speak with any of the members of the board of directors of Via Verde Ridge regarding this matter?
I can't speak to staff, but I had a Zoom meeting with two members of, I believe, may have been the architectural committee. One was one member and then a new member of it. And then I've had a phone conversation with, I believe, the president yesterday.
Thank you.
Henry?
Just as both Ken and I have had conversations with Gary Enderly, the HOA president, previously.
And that's before this meeting?
Before this meeting and before previous meetings.
Before previous meetings as well? Thank you.
Henry, how long has this issue been before the planning department?
What particular issue?
We're talking about
the initiation.
Increasing the size.
On May 12th, 2020.
2020.
That's when it was initiated by Councilmember Vienna and seconded by Weber to look at the history and the applicability of this particular grading limitation.
And I just, for clarity, that was not brought up pursuant to a specific applicant, but it was rather brought up to look at the municipal code and examine it, correct?
Correct.
All right.
So, if I read you correctly, what you're saying is that we should adopt option one, doesn't matter what else we do, and then go on from there to put other limits or additions on, right?
I would say that would be the minimum if you're considering anything more.
Ken, I wonder if I could ask you, I'm sorry to ask you again, to describe how much cubic yards would fill up this place?
To the roof, I think, was 1,240.
Well, not quite to the roof, because again, that's
to the roof of here.
to the top, right?
We go up to this upper right before the pyramid starts, because again, that math was, without getting the measurements, was going to be a little rough. It's about 1,220 cubic yards.
For this whole place to be filled?
Up to where you see like the cross members starting for the roof.
Basically, that would be unlimited amount, because I can't imagine you'd want to have more cut and fill than this room.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I spent some time going up looking at the hillside and what have you there, and in the previous meeting prior to the continuation, I was advocating at that time, if I recall correctly, for unlimited grading, but as Chris alluded to, that was predicated off of the uniqueness of each one of the properties. But after going up there and looking at some of them and looking at the visualization of this, I think, 1,240, 1,000 is a nice round number to me. If 1,000 cubic yards could do it, taking into account the slope, I think that's fair and reasonable for all those people that live up there. And protects the view shed without getting too crazy into, taking down the hillside, if you will. Personally, that's my opinion.
I have some thoughts on it. Do you want to discuss the various things about it?
Okay, well, why don't we bring it back to the council right now to discuss it. John, go ahead.
I just wanted to start with one observation, and that's about the homeowners association. The Via Verde Ridge Homeowners Association has been very active the entire time that this specific plan has been in effect, and they take their work very seriously. I know that some HOA and a lot of other HOAs do as well. Let me not do that kind of comparison, but this one definitely takes their work seriously. And the practice anyway has been that, and I understand Chris's point about, you don't want to go all the way through the HOA's process and get that 90-day clock ticking and then start your process with the city. But I would think that to just forge a good relationship with the homeowners association, that if the city were to get an application or somebody were to come to the city and not an actual application, even just start talking about it, that the city would say, well, you really should talk to the HOA about that too. So you get everybody in the conversation as you go forward. And more than that, even the city has a relationship with these homeowners associations and should actually say to the homeowners association, we've got some ideas or plans, proposals, and they're going to come your way pretty soon. I'm not sure if that's what happened here. It sounds like the HOA didn't know about it officially anyway. So I'm just saying, in general, it's good in this particular case for sure that things shouldn't go to the council or planning staff and go all the way through the council process and then finally land in the HOA's lap. And it's just a matter of, it's a matter of respect, really, among all the parties for the three sides to let each other know what's going on. We all have a different role, and obviously the council's got the final say of all this stuff, except for those additional restrictions you were referring to. But that's just a comment in general. So I'm not sure what happened here. But in full disclosure, John began it, and his wife invited me up to their house, and I did take a tour. I think others on the council might have done that too, of the properties, and saw the different issues that they were pointing out. And I've talked to other people, specifically Gary Enderly, a number of times on the other side of the issue. So I just wanted to let you know that I have talked to different people about it. That's my comment for now. I've got some others, but just the HOAs.
Well, I'll just follow up to that I appreciate Councilman Ebner's comments. I vividly remember in 2016 standing at that podium in my role, which I currently am in today as the president of my HOA, and the city didn't do anything to help me as in my HOA role. And I vividly remember John and I walking out, and one day you said to me, Ryan, we really should have just required the builder to annex those two HOAs. And I remember that because it was one of the reasons I ran. And it's because the viewpoint of causing an HOA to take on structural and financial liabilities to new homeowners I thought was wrong. And in this case, the people have been offended here. The city, for over 20 years, has been asleep at the wheel. Somewhere in the process, there was a fumble. And these people have suffered through this, essentially. And the people are asking us now for some reasonable accommodation, number one, to remedy this problem, and number two is to be able to enjoy their properties. And so, when I hear the HOA speaking, I have experience in that, and I think that it's very well understood. Not only do I have experience in it, we're in the middle of mediation with another HOA because of a condition that I feel the city created, but the city's not a party to at this point. So this is another situation where the city is kind of in a unique quandary between an HOA, a segment of the population within an HOA, and its own municipal code that was subsequently found to not exist, or at least what's been approved is offending. And so, I think that we're at a point now to remedy this one and make it right, bring those homes into compliance. Number two is just specifically to the HOA, not to get too far off base, that the HOA, it's very clear, CC&Rs exist. Right now, there is building going on because of the gold line. And it's understood that the city will make changes and the gold line and what have you, easements and everything else, to be able to facilitate what it needs to do, because progress happens, things happen. We need to change, we need to grow, as Mr. Lau talked about, the last speaker you were referring to, who lives up there. So from my perspective, hearing those slopes being dangerous for residents, they are dangerous for residents. If you went up there and you looked at it and you stood out of anybody's backyard, going down a hill is much different than going up a hill. And, I'm concerned for the kids. I'm concerned for the snakes. I'm concerned for the coyotes. And I will say, I did meet with the president of the HOA, Mr. Gary Enderly, as well as Zach, the chair of the architectural committee, months ago, and spoke with them regarding this particular issue. I do believe some other members of council had also made the village Via Verde Ridge HOA aware of the issue. So I don't think that where we're at today, there's the two issues, I think, as Chris framed it. There's one, this issue about addressing the cubic yards and bringing the non-conforming or non-complying properties into compliance. And then there's this issue of what that looks like after we approve it. The HOA, I do believe, is a separate issue, but I do know that they were consulted, involved, and met with. I spoke with numerous homeowners up there. I think that I think people will have to use, as people said, reasonable accommodation. And as I previously stated, I think we need to protect the view shed, come up with some sort of regulation that requires aesthetically pleasing grading and perhaps stepped retaining walls, protect the view shed in that way, but things that also deal with the slope and the topography. Therefore, just as I previously stated, I am supportive of the recommendation of staff of option 1, and I appreciate that, with the only modification of upping it to 1,000 cubic yards from the written 100 with everything else as proposed.
Written 100 or written 200?
I'm sorry, written 200, increasing that to 1,000 as proposed with everything else.
1,000 would be
Before anybody makes a motion, go ahead, Dennis. I just don't want a motion to be made until we have some more discussion.
I'm sorry, John, I got too many people talking at one time.
Oh, I just didn't. I wanted a little more discussion before a motion is made, if possible. Okay. There's no rule that somebody can't make a motion, but I think there's a little bit more discussion we should have.
Okay, I was going to say it should be increased, but I think 1,000 is excessive. You might as well go to the unlimited if you said 1,000.
I don't agree with I think the unlimited, and speaking to some of the residents, there are some residents that feel that 2,500 cubic yards would be appropriate for their unique situation with the slopes that they have. I don't know that I agree with that. That would be double the chambers, if you will, with that example. So I'm kind of at 1,000. To me, there's a distinction of it not being unlimited.
I think there's a difference between 1,000 and unlimited. Just the word unlimited makes it like, going to cut off tops of the mountains. Right. So I have concerns about using the words unlimited. Okay, John?
Oh yeah. A specific plan is created because the area is unique in some way, as you all know, and we've got 20-something specific plans for one thing or another. Some are industrial areas, some are residential, and you guys have all read it, but I want to just note that the purpose and intent of SP 11 includes the following couple things. I'm not going to read the whole thing. but one is to minimize the alteration of significant natural landforms, vegetation, and landmarks. And another one that's important is to minimize the impact of new development into the surrounding viewshed, especially as seen from adjacent existing development. So I know one of the arguments that's been made is that those people who are looking up at the homes and the yards and development in planning area 1, they really shouldn't have a beef, because it's the people up above whose property it is, and they don't, there's no right to other people having any particular view of one kind or another. But in San Dimas, and we've done this in a number of specific plans and other developments, over the years, not to say that the council cannot change it at some point, but over the years, we have tried to minimize the effect on what other people see. And I could, and this has caused a lot of, this isn't the first time that we've had this kind of discussion where people are saying, I own that property, but you're requiring me just to maintain it as natural, and in one case irrigated, so that trees and plants would grow, so that everybody else can see it, have a nice view. But by golly, those trees are growing up and blocking my view of the outside world, or the LA or the mountains or whatever. And when in fact the specific plan itself says that the intent is to preserve what other people see of that development. You might recall back in the 90s, and I know I've been around a long time, and I've mentioned this before, but the foothills used to be zoned basically like Villa Verde, and that was going to lead to development like Villa Verde. And it took a while, but we did a zone change and a specific plan, as a matter of fact, that preserved the view of those foothills, especially the ridge lines, and limited an extreme limitation on what people could build up there. And the council at that time felt that that kind of action to preserve what people in San Dimas, all people, see was important. So I just wanted to lead off by that. And I know we're not in a public hearing right now. That's coming later, I would imagine. But that's one thing that's important. I don't know if anybody has any comments about that. I have a couple other comments, unless somebody wants to talk about that.
Just a note on that, John. I appreciate you bringing up that the specific plan does seek to preserve that scenic view, but I think, from my perspective, the scenic easement that's in place. I mean, we've essentially, when this was set aside, the scenic easements in these properties, we've forced individuals to buy a large lot and divided part of it as developable and part of it as a scenic easement. And to me, the scenic easement is the protection of that land. And I'm not sure, somebody threw out 40 acres of scenic easement up there. I'm not really sure what the number is. I think that was just a citizen comment, but whatever that is, I mean, that's a large amount of scenic easement that, and, you know, I guess that's where we split hairs, is whether the scenic easement satisfies that provision or not. And I mean, I completely agree that's important as a part of SP 11. But
it's a good hair to split. It's a good hair to split, Eric, because if you read the intent of a specific plan and you read the kinds of restrictions that are on it that fulfill that or try to fulfill that intent, you realize that it's not just the scenic easement that's preserved. It's the rest of the topography outside the house itself and the driveway and the garage. So you've been to Mr. Begin's house. Well, I think you have, or at least you've seen it. Mm-hmm. And I was privileged to go in his backyard, and everything. He's got a big garage. He's got a big house. So he's done a lot with his property. And I think he did, all of it within the rules. But he's got a little more property that's not in the scenic easement. So in this case, the specific plan is clear. It's to preserve the topography that exists before any houses were built at all. And the scenic easement is like a total backstop, like you're definitely not going to do anything with that. But if you follow these certain rules, you can do things in the buildable, what you're calling the buildable area. But it's not that you can build anything you want in that buildable area. You've got to do it so that it preserves that view shed from, to a certain, to an extent possible. Granted, you're allowing houses, but to the extent possible from surrounding areas. And, one caller lives on the end of Avenida Monte Vista. He looks up, he and his wife and family look up at the scenic easement, which is great, and they get all the benefits of that. They also look up at that hillside, and they looked up at that hillside the entire time they've lived there. They bought and they have enjoyed it under the rules that the city put in place. So I guess my argument is those rules are not out of date and not archaic. They serve a purpose, and there are many, many, many residents who enjoy the benefit of those rules. There are some members of the community who are burdened by those rules and the restrictions. And that's sort of the tug between when people want to do something and other people don't want it. And we go back to what the rules are. We're perfectly within our rights here to change it to 1,000 or anything else. But I'm just trying to point out that the purpose is to preserve that view shed as well as the topography itself and vegetation and stuff. Sorry for that long-winded answer.
No, I hear you, and I totally respect that viewpoint as well. I totally understand.
The only thing, the last thing I'm going to say is that that's the main thing that, in what I alluded to in a question I asked before, all properties that you buy are burdened by some kind of restrictions, and many, many people have tiny backyards. In fact, we're allowing, if you think about the new development down here on San Dimas Avenue, right before Allen, a lot of those houses are big, and they don't have the biggest backyards. A couple do, but I think what we're talking about here is literally allowing the folks up on Calle Cristina and Paseo Lucinda to have bigger backyards than some of these developments we've allowed on the flatlands, and other houses that just for whatever reason have these minuscule backyards that you couldn't put a pool in. I mean, some you'd be hard pressed to get a spot in there. So when we talk about people's rights to do one thing or another, or people being like, it's not right that we're not allowing them to do certain things. There's cases throughout the city of that kind of a thing going on, and people generally should, they bought into the restrictions when they bought the property, and they should live with them. It's their right to petition for a change, obviously. But I think that some people just can't build a basketball court in their backyard. That's just, as nice as that might be, some people just can't do that. They just don't have enough property or the type of property that would allow that. So anyway, I was struck by, I think it was locking out of Flint Ridge, one of the other things, and nothing about the specifics, but they called the hills and the views aesthetic relief for the residents. And that's one way of thinking about the way our hillsides look and are enjoyed by all of the residents. And the last thing I'll say, just nuts and bolts, if we are going to increase the grading at all, and I'm not in favor of that, but if we do it beyond the 200 cubic yards, But if we are going to increase it, we can't be afraid of math and specifics. So if you look at some of the codes from the cities that don't have specific limits, they've got a lot of, there are limits, as a matter of fact, because there is so much math and so much specifics about what you can do and how you can do it. I mean, our hillside ordinance, I think we've got a page on it. You look at Claremont, it goes page after page, and I think blocking off Flint Ridge, Palos Verdes maybe, I can't remember the ones, but get specific, get mathematical, so we really know what we're doing, and we're trying to preserve as much as we can. And with that, that's all I've got to say.
You know, the one thing I will say is that in just to go on what you said, John, I will remind everybody here that our staff is the ones who brought this forward. Okay, so you know, it's a current new staff. They're looking at everything. They're not just rubber stamping the stuff. They've researched it and found out that we, the city, you know, we're not playing by the rules, even though we thought we were playing by the rules, which also would mean that the HOA isn't playing by the rules, but they thought they were playing by the rules. So the reality is that we just got to figure out how to get us moving forward, and that's the best we can do. You know, we can't blouse this over simply because otherwise we could just say, hey, there is no municipal code section to it. We're just going to, nothing will be ever approved ever again up there. And I don't think that's what anybody in this room wants to do, and I don't believe that's what you want to do. So
I think option one takes care of all of what you just said.
What?
I would be curious why staff picked this particular specific plan to start with.
Because they had a submission. That's why they had it. They, you know, somebody applied for, you know, to build a project. That's how come it's, as far as I know, that's what's going on. Is that not right, Henry? The reason why you're looking at this plan is because you received a submittal?
No, this is with regards to the May 12th, 2020 City Council meeting when Councilmember Vienna asked the staff to look at the history of this particular development code section and to see if it still is relevant.
Okay, but with that all being said, somebody has submitted an application?
So after the start of this review, we did receive an application, and it was, to your point, in the review of that application that didn't comport with the practice. The assumption was you're just going to go through with the practice of what DPRB was. No. We need to change the code if we're going to allow anybody to do grading greater than what's allowed in the code, if we're going to allow people to do what DPRB stated.
And then we found out the code was silent on it.
That the code would not, that the code does not authorize that kind of grading.
Right.
Now, this applicant may or may not be able to comply with that code section if you approve option one. And so it's irrelevant what the applicant's requesting. It just brings to light, you know what, we're going to be denying all these projects if council doesn't make a positive change in the code. So let's ask the council to make that change. And that ask, which I recommended earlier today, was because of that applicant.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add to something John brought up that I appreciate the history that you shared regarding this. If I was elected then, I would have never supported the building of these homes on Cali Cristina. It just wasn't realistic I understand the intent for what you're trying to do, but the scenic easement's intent is very clear on what it intends to do, and I don't think in today's world that where we are at or where we've gotten perhaps many moons later had the foresight, and I don't blame the people that live there for that. People are going to get old. We are all going to get old. And when somebody buys a home, the gentleman, Mr. Lau, that lives up there sounds or professed to be the youngest person up there. I bet dollars to donuts he probably is. But that being said, as people age, you can't just go live up there. Just the economics of it for somebody to even live up there. They're larger homes. They require or would like to have different amenities. And therefore, they should have been built with some foresight to where that would be. Just like I equate it back to where I live and what you told me, that we should have required it to make it work right the first time. And I think that where we're at today is that follow-up many moons later, that we've seen the intention, I think, was good, and I think the intent of the scenic easement is good to protect the viewshed. But I also think that the property owners have an expectation to be able to make use of their property, and I don't think, as the gentleman in the basketball court example, having his kid chase a ball down the hill and risk getting hit by a car makes much sense, let alone having it go down the back of a hillside to try and chase that down. So I think we have a unique opportunity here to remedy this, and thankfully, we're here today. Eric and I brought this up. This revelation was had when staff caught it, and we have an opportunity to make it right, I think.
Just not to debate any point you said, Ryan, but yeah, absent the restrictions, I wish Mr. Prada could have his basketball court, because he and his kids are a great family, and that kind of amenity is a great amenity.
He can have a basketball court. You can do that tonight.
But again, I think that kind of a thing just is not possible with the restrictions we have, and I think they're good restrictions. But
understood.
To your point, it's good that we're looking at it, and I totally agree with staff's recommendation that we need to codify what we've been doing.
I've got a few things. First, are you good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry. For those in the community that were concerned about certain individuals that may or may not have supported me, I want to address that head on. I hear you. It's been flushed out before that it's not a conflict. And not so strangely, it omits that there was support from people on both sides of this issue that I got during my campaign. I really hope that all of you are confident that every single one of the members of council up here have one duty, and that's to make a decision that they believe is in the best interest of the city, not any individual or supporter. But I would be extremely hesitant to suspend or dissuade residents from supporting candidates who they think have values that align closely with their own. I think that's a very fundamental right that is afforded to us in a representative democracy, and that's just the way our system works, for better or for worse. But I certainly hope that my explanations of my stance on this help people understand where I'm at, and that I don't really have an allegiance to anybody here. I think not a whole lot would get done on council if every issue that was brought forward or every problem that we hear from somebody who supported us is somehow grounds for us recusing ourselves. So I don't think we would be a very productive or effective governing body if we were to go down that road. So I hear you, but I want to make sure that everybody's clear, like I said, on my stance on this. So I'm going to be a little lengthy. I have some notes, so I apologize in advance. I'm going to try to get them through as quick as possible.
And Eric, just, you're not alone, and I'll speak for myself, but I too received campaign contributions from members who are on other sides of this as well in the impacted area. And I believe other members of council that are considering this have recently or in the past received contributions from people who even spoke tonight on both sides of this.
Yeah, it really is a balancing act, and it's kind of one of those dichotomies of leadership in general. I mean, never are any of us going to be able to make everybody happy, and it's kind of a universal truth that we need to work through that and find what we believe is really in the best interest of who we represent, and that's the whole city. So just touching on a few of my points, something I want to definitely air out is I don't know how this issue really got brought up as a binary issue of either keeping a current practice or destroying scenic areas with nothing in between, because that's not the case at all. That's a very frequently used false dichotomy, like the "you're with us" or "you're against us" type of atmosphere that really doesn't exist, I think, in this issue at all. I think the reality is that there's many objective standards that we can use to balance both property owners' wants and needs, the HOA's wants and needs, and protection of open areas. I really do think that there's a balance there somewhere that we can arrive to. Again, like Councilmember Vienna was saying, I personally met with the HOA president and the head of the architectural committee. I've talked to them on the phone once or a couple of times at least. In addition to that, I've heard their concerns. I don't know that they quite understand through my explanations of this issue that we're discussing today, and that's that we have the code, the the written but unofficial rule, and then the unwritten rule, and they all kind of conflict with each other. I don't know that that's quite made it out there just yet. But through those meetings, phone calls, emails that I've gotten, and comments today, I think it's pretty clear to me that there are, aside from this issue, there are probably some unaddressed issues in the HOA which need to be addressed internally in the HOA. Nothing that we can say or do here tonight is going to heal any of that issue within the HOA. So I really encourage everybody in the HOA, whether it's on the board or just members of the HOA and residents that live up there, to work with each other to try to figure out how that relationship can work better, because obviously something's not working there. Again, to touch on the idea that no change can be made and everything is going to be fine, I think as we've found out throughout this kind of exploration, it's just untrue. As staff pointed out, now and in the past, there's several sets of standards, and like I said, it's the official one, the unofficial one, and the unwritten one, and we haven't followed them for a long time, and that's problematic for me, and it's something that I campaigned specifically to look at and try to fix is these type of issues. So I don't know that it should be any surprise to anybody in the public that I would be in favor of taking a look at this. The reality to me is that a laissez-faire practice such as this that we've had for so long has gotten cities in some hot water, and whatever we can do to address that and fix it, I think it's not only prudent, but it's our duty to do so. Wanted to point out again that nobody, as far as I know, has advocated for or requested building in scenic easements. That's not something that has been brought up or suggested. Just to get that out there, I think there was some confusion about that. I also think that we as a governing body and the government and the city has a fundamental duty to be upfront with citizens as it relates to our standards and why we're doing them. I've heard concerns about this issue over and over again about unsightly retaining walls. But if in this case we're looking to control retaining walls, I don't see controlling dirt as an effective means of controlling the unsightliness of retaining walls. I kind of see that as a backdoor control, and in general, my experience is that those backdoor type of controls that control one thing but try to indirectly control another are what really irritate members of the public. They don't sit well, and it's just kind of disingenuous for us as the city to do that. In this instance, if it is retaining walls that we're concerned about, we can set standards to control the appearance of those retaining walls and make them less unsightly. For instance, we could set a slope like John was talking about, a slope that matches natural topography and can't be any steeper than 60% slope or 60-degree slope or whatever, or something that has to have planted vegetation on it or whatever. There are those controls I think we can do. And also, I think it's been pretty clear through the time that I've listened to everybody about this that the residents up there have had 37 years of vacancies in the neighborhood up there, and they're kind of done with it. And I can't say that I blame them. 37 years of undeveloped vacant properties and unsightly construction fences, I'm sure would probably get on my nerves as well. So that's all I wanted to get out. I appreciate everybody for hanging through it, but I wanted to make sure that people understood that I'm not, I'm not beholden to anybody. I think it's important in this instance, since there was concerns about it, for me to kind of air that out. So thanks for sticking with me.
I'm not against change, and I'm not against increasing it. I just think 1,000 is a little excessive. If you could imagine this much land filled as this room, the type of a restraining wall that you would have, or a retaining wall, a restraining wall that you would have to be enormous. And when I say it's the same as saying unlimited, I'm not in favor of obviously unlimited, but it's who's going to want to do more than 1,000 cubic feet? I can't imagine anyone. So basically what you're saying, if you approve 1,000 cubic feet, you're saying do what you want.
Dennis, let me ask staff a question. Is there a restriction on the height of the retaining wall? Somewhere along the way, I heard that there was a restriction on that.
The SP 11 refers back to the single-family hillside grading ordinance, which does have a 12-foot restriction on restraining walls.
Okay, now can that be 12?
I didn't understand that. Is there a restriction or not?
There is. It's not in SP 11. SP 11 itself refers back to the single-family hillside zone as far as the wall standards. And in the single-family hillside zone, there is a 12-foot limit for any retaining wall.
Now, could that be 12 feet, then 12 feet, the step down type thing? Or
it could be, and that's also something that we could work with as far as development standards go.
All right, yeah.
Well, I do think to what Dennis, what you're talking about is when you look at this, it's all relative, right? If the slope is significant or if it's slight, and this is spread out over a greater distance, 1,000 cubic yards could chalk up to only be so many feet, versus if you had a much less area, this seems much higher. But the topography in question up there, for the most part, is pretty steep. So when somebody goes in there and they're going to try to do something, and you're trying to figure that out, they're really just filling in a giant triangle to a certain degree, and having some sloping and stepping to be able to accommodate it. So that's why I'm thinking 1,000. When you look at it that way, depending on which side, like if you're on the opposite side, the county-facing side of Cali Cristina, that slope is pretty thick. I mean, it's sloped different.
Does that mean that staff is going to come back with the control of the amount of height of the retaining walls?
We would be at the direction and of the council, we would be coming back with certain design regulations, like Councilmember Vienna had mentioned, going with the topography, stepping the retaining walls, things of that nature, we can look at and be part of this municipal code text amendment.
And they'd be reviewed by the Planning Commission as well.
Correct.
It will be reviewed by the Planning Commission?
Yes.
You know, the one thing that, Dennis, anything else?
You got to finish.
One thing that's concerning to me is that I don't want to go to codifying the 200 square yards and then come back 4 weeks from now and then start talking about 1,000 square yards. So tell me what the staff is planning on doing. Are they planning on meeting with the homeowners association, meeting with the person trying to get this done, and then the city trying to, I don't want to say negotiate, but get these parties together and come up with something? Because it sounds like to me that A, B, and C aren't talking to each other.
No, you raise a good question. The original premise for this was to evaluate the code. The application we received prompted us to look deeply into what's allowed. That uncovered the inconsistency. And then because of that and all the remaining issues of what we want to do and how much we want to let people grade up there raises the issue of HOA's role with the city's role with, and so our premise is option one is what we're recommending. We're not engaging in any further discussion because this is what has already been approved by the HOA and us. So there is no need for a continued discussion on a matter that was already in place for the last 2 to 3 decades. But if the council directs us to sit down with the HOA, we can. However, when you look in the code to the retaining wall question, anything that has a retaining wall that has greater than 50 cubic yards of grading, excluding the pool, requires planning director approval. And there's not a specific standard in that. It's in the generic section of the code, but it's referenced in SB 11. And so there is discretion on the behalf of staff. If the request from the council is, no, we want really specific development standards and we want to tell you what kind of standards we want, either you're letting staff develop that and put it through the process, or you're giving some kind of direction related to it. And so
I'm concerned with the latter of that I think the soils engineers, the topography, and everything that goes into this, the city, I don't want the city expending an inordinate amount of money on this when I think the residents should do their due diligence and bring it to the city for review and take it to the city engineer. I'm afraid that if we go down and get too specific, given the topography that's up there, it may not be in our best interest overall.
Ryan, I would counter that by saying that as we go on in time, if we're just going to rely on what is possible engineering-wise with slopes and things, Dave from RKA, our city engineer, is going to be able to sign off on anything almost, because it's all going to be possible to do right down to the line of the scenic easement. So I think we do need to put standards in there, regardless of what the number is. I mean, even if we go with 1,000 or something else, we need to put standards in there and then say what you can and cannot do. I mean, if there's an outcropping, for example, that's flat and then all of a sudden it takes a drop of 10 feet and it's vertical or almost vertical, are you going to allow them to remove that natural topography, or are we saying all bets are off and they can just grade wherever they want as long as it's engineering is possible in an engineering standpoint?
Right, and I think that for a city that has a planning commission and DPRB, I think we have a review process to ensure those things are addressed or they'll get elevated at some point. But I just don't know that at the council level, as it relates to the municipal code text amendment, that we need to get that granular in what's before us now.
My experience in the past is that if it's not spelled out, or whatever is spelled out in the code, that many individuals and people who want to develop things will go right up to the line on that limitation, and they will appeal it as many times as they need to get to a body that is sympathetic to the viewpoint that we should not be restricting them in basically any way. It's really hard, and staff has asked this in the past. The current staff, I think, has asked this as well, and Chris seems to be alluding to it, that we need things that staff can say, it doesn't, you've got to change this because A, B, and C. It can't be that staff says, well, I just don't like the look of it, or DPRB says, I just don't like the look of it. And, in my opinion, that's doing this or that. It's got to have numbers and, like I said, math and specifics, so that homeowners on Calle Cristina know what they can do, rather than saying, oh, I like this idea, and here it is, city staff. And then just, they're basically, playing poker with their plans every single time. If there aren't specifics about what kinds of slopes can be changed and that kind of thing, unless you're saying, and it's a perfectly valid viewpoint. I may not agree with it, but it's a perfectly valid viewpoint to say they own the property, they can do whatever they want, as long as it's reasonable.
Chris?
I completely agree with what Councilmember Ebner and Councilmember Vienna are saying about the parameters for which any of these improvements are going to occur. But let's remember, the 200 cubic yards that was in place and what was being done up there has been being done for now 3 decades without specific standards related to the ancillary uses. When you look at the specific development code under SP 11, there's permitted uses, incidental, accessory, and then conditional uses. Under conditional uses is where retaining walls fall. And when you look at the specific definition, it does not give a hard number, as to Council Ebner's point about what are the specific maths associated with it, presumably because every parcel is completely different than each other, but it does specify that when the installation of the conditional structures, this is cabanas, retaining walls, supported patios, decks, swimming pools, tennis courts, etc., does not require grading which changes the characteristics of the landform or the scenic quality of the surrounding area, the action of the Development Plan Review Board shall be final unless appealed according to another section. In all other cases, the DPRB shall provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission, and approval of the Planning Commission shall be required. And so while there's not a specific number attached to those uses, because you can't define it with the kind of landform that you have on the parcels, what it does say is if you really are changing what's very important to us, there's a review process that has independent bodies, that has some public review all the way up to Planning Commission. And so I would ask to the council, we're more than happy to develop specific numeric standards. I'm assuming it's going to be quite a lift if you're trying to do it and provide some level of equity across the properties. But we will do that if this existing language isn't sufficient to accommodate your needs.
Well, after reviewing all of it, and I do agree with what John's saying in the context that I don't think it should be carte blanche, but at the same time, just taking a step back in terms of what's in front of us tonight for the purposes of the municipal code text amendment, I'm going to move that we adopt option 1 with a modification from 200 cubic yards to 1,000 cubic yards to be allowed by the DPRB, with the exemption for necessary for a pool and a 5-foot deck around the pool. And I just want to be very clear about that I make that motion with the intent that it is also subject to the subsequent reviews to ensure the continuity and the protection of the view shed and the easements and everything else that go along with it, and the review process for which you've outlined. Any other discussion?
Okay, I I just want to make a few comments myself. And it's one is...
Mayor, point of order, is there a second on that motion, or is it?
I was going to throw out one thing, and John actually kind of touched on it a little bit, and that's that if we're entertaining this idea of additional grading, and we want to protect the view shed by having more natural style grading and landforms, what have you, it might not be a bad idea to exempt any grading that is brought in to mimic natural landforms or slopes. He touched on the idea that shape is not exempted from the grading.
Okay.
I don't know. You have a motion on the table, and
if you're proposing an amendment to it, I am happy to accept it. I just want to be clear on what exactly that is before accepting it.
Well, what I was saying, so I may not support the motion, but what I was saying about that in particular, Eric's right. So if somebody wants to build a pool at first floor level, and there's a big drop of some kind, and it takes a ton of dirt, or a lot of tons, as many cubic yards as you need to raise the ground up so the pool can be level with that first floor. All that dirt that's brought in is not counted as anything. It's unlimited grading for that purpose, or unlimited dirt brought in. It's not going to be graded on the property at that point. However, what Ken was saying was after you get the pool and the 5 foot around it, I mean, you could have just a sheer wall going all the way down, which in some cases I've seen would probably go down like 20 feet maybe, straight down. And then you're good, except you have the retaining wall restriction. But if you wanted to put any other dirt there besides what's under the pool and the 5 foot walkway, any dirt to slope downward to make it look more natural as an actual hillside. I mean, you're actually creating a hillside. It's not natural, obviously, but you're creating something. All that dirt would be in the limitation you're talking about, whether it's 1,000, 200, unlimited, whatever. So all that dirt does count toward that limitation. Does that make sense, Ryan?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
that's what I was saying. Where it might be, I mean, if we're going to approve that kind of thing, then that's where it would, like Eric was just saying, it might be beneficial, to use that word advisedly, to at least create a hillside with plantings on it rather than just, 2 or 3 12-foot retaining walls that everybody has to look at.
yeah, I think that would just, hopefully the goal would be, I guess, to encourage people to actually protect the view shed in that regard.
Is that, I'm asking staff, is that a possibility to do what they're talking about? Because that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a possibility, and that's something that if you direct us to initiate this zoning amendment tonight, I'm sure staff can figure out a way to word that, and it'll go to the Planning Commission with the rest of the zoning amendment. And then
I can't support a 20 or 30 foot retaining wall.
Right, and I agree with that. I don't support that either.
Yeah, but I could support something that was on a slope like you're talking about, that was planted, which would look natural.
Yeah.
Let me give an alternative way of doing that as opposed to increasing the limit that you're talking about. Maybe it's possible in some form of change to leave the 200 feet in place like staff was suggesting, so codify that. But then when you're doing that kind of a pool, to allow the slope we're talking about, which is additional dirt brought in, so additional quote-unquote grading, to allow that to be exempt from the just like the dirt under the pool, to be part of the pool, part of the house, that kind of a thing. So you don't have the, so in other words, instead of increasing the limit overall, you're just increasing what you're doing about the pool to make it look more natural. And I know that's not what the residents are asking, and that's not Ryan's motion. I just wanted to point out that's another alternative to achieve the same goal for a pool.
Yeah, I worry with what you're saying that a smart developer will exploit what you're saying through their project and do it very tactfully. And so for that reason, I hear what you're saying 100%. I am in agreement with the previous conversation. I don't support, and the intent of the motion is not to create 20, 30-foot retaining walls. I agree with the other members of council that have expressed an interest that the intent of this would be to establish a standard that is able to create or preserve, I guess create is probably a more appropriate use of a word, create a hillside natural appearance rather than having sheer retaining walls drop off. So the approval, the option one with the spirit of what the other council members have said, it would be my motion.
With the increase to 1,000 feet from.
Correct.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a first and second. Can I talk now?
Yes, sir. Sorry, Mayor.
Just thought I'd ask. First off, I too want to make it public that on both sides of this coin, the side that wants it and the side who discourages it, I too, over the last 14 years, have received money, $50 here, $99 here, and so just so everyone's aware that over 15 years, I think everybody in this council, I'd be surprised if somebody could say they did not receive some type of cash donations of some kind. So with that all being said, the other side of this is that I also have been called and talked to by Gary. We did not get into the specifics. He did ask me if I would like to meet with him and or he actually sent me a text, meet with any one of the architectural committee. I received a call from a member of the architectural committee, or actually their board, and I advised her that I wasn't going to meet with either side based on the facts of my prior history with other developments in this city that I've met with, the prior mayor met with, people wanting to come to San Dimas and look at a project, and at the end of the day, when they got up here in front of us, they said, well, Councilman Behringer said this, or Mayor Morris said this, and so I've opted not to listen to that. I waited to hear from my staff report. I've got it. They made a suggestion, and that's where it's at. But I do want to say that I received several calls today and several emails, and not one person that contacted me on either side of it ever discussed or even rumored that they wanted to destroy the view shed or the topography. Every one of them had that in mind. Nobody said they were going to build, I want enough property to build a condominium in the back. In fact, no, I never even heard that the ADU comment at all. Only thing I heard was people wanting to do something to enhance their yard, and I don't think anybody at all who at least talked to me was unrealistic. And of the people who called in, considerable amount of people said text and emails, no text at all. Emails and phone calls who said that they were totally of the opinion that we were looking at, no limits to the grading. So that's what everybody was saying. A couple of them said, there's got to be a number in between, there's got to be this, and some people have thrown out numbers. I had numbers from unlimited grading to 5,000 feet of grading to 2,500 feet of grading to 1,000. Now I have an idea what 1,000 foot of grading means, but I also have decided that in fairness to everybody, okay, I don't think that whatever we do is going to make the applicants happy, and I don't think that whatever we do is going to make the homeowners association. What we need to figure out is how we can work together and come up with something. So with that being said, I just want to say that in my order to protect the hillside view shed and to allow property owners some flexibility in using their property, I'm going to support staff preparing a municipal code text amendment to allow grading of 1,000 cubic yards in special planning area 11, project 1, and to exempt them from the calculation of grading necessary for a pool and a 5-foot deck around the pool as had been previously approved by the city. The one thing that came up here is we clarified that the walls have a limit of 12 feet. And so I think that that's very important. I don't think we heard that anywhere else. I don't believe we read it in a staff report. So I think that's an important thing. And the other thing is that some of these people that want this extra land to do something with, they've already done things with pools, or they don't want a pool. They want, like the one man said, a basketball court. I don't know if you can get a basketball court out of whatever, because this is compacted soil. It's not just, this what it is. So that's where I stand on it, and I guess I'll call for a...
Can I ask the city attorney a question? This is going to come back to the council, right?
Yes, you're initiating the zoning amendment tonight, and staff is going to bring it to the Planning Commission first, hold a public hearing. They'll make a recommendation to you, and it'll come back to you for a public hearing.
So you can vote one way tonight and not vote the same way when it comes back, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I will vote in favor of this with the understanding that if I am not convinced when it comes back to the council that it's not going to look like giant walls and everything, if it does, in my opinion, I will vote against it. Hopefully it doesn't come back that way. But I just want to explain that right now. I will vote in favor of this because I'm counting on staff to come back something that we can all look at and say, hey, that looks rather natural.
Thank you. And I agree 100%, Dennis, and I'm glad you voiced it that way. I don't think anybody on this council or anybody in the staff, and I don't believe anybody living in that area want to see something ugly in the hills cut down. But I think that in fairness to all the parties, let's see what it looks like when everything's done. So I'll call for...
let me make, just because Dennis, so I'll be voting against it. I will, but on the other hand, keep an open mind, because we're not supposed to make up our minds until the public hearings for the actual municipal code text amendment. So I'll certainly be looking at what staff brings back. And for the record, I looked through the past 3 elections, and I have not received any contributions from anybody in SP 11.
Well, John, I respect you, and I certainly respect your vote, and I can understand it. And the reason I'm voting in favor of it is that I feel that if I can be part of the process, I have a better chance of coming out with something that I like at the end than if I fight it all the way. But I do
understand and respect that, Dennis.
I do respect your vote.
Thank you.
And John, please accept my apology. It's hard to imagine that anybody hasn't, in that whole hill up there, received it. So I apologize. I should have never assumed.
No, it's okay. I think a lot of members of the council raise more money than I do for my campaigns, and I self-fund That's hard to do, but I self-fund and really run on a lean budget.
Well, except for Edison, but that's something else.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
What are you talking about?
Mayor Pro Tem Bertone,
Yes.
Councilmember Ebner,
No.
Councilmember Viana,
Yes.
Councilmember Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Badar.
Yes.
That vote carries by a 4-1 count, with Councilmember Ebner voting no.
Okay. All right, moving on. COVID-19 update.
Given the time, I'll go quickly through this. Positivity rates are dropping, so we are expecting that we may fall into the red tier by the mid to end March or early April. As of March 2nd, vaccination eligibility is now Tier 1B, and this includes teachers, school staff, child care workers, and emergency service workers, which includes city employees here in the city of San Dimas. Bonita Unified has confirmed that April 5th, Monday, is a firm start date for in-person elementary school, and then they're tentatively predicting that April 12th would be the same for middle and high school, assuming we fall back into the red tier. Access to vaccine doses is really a limiting factor, but we know that vaccines are available through Albertsons, Costco, CVS Pharmacy, and Mercy, and our nearby LA County sites of Pomona, Fairplex, and Cal Poly Pomona. You can make appointments for March 8th through the 14th at myturn.ca.gov. The California Public Health released their prioritization for vaccines, which they're designating 40% of them, of the vaccines, to go to areas, vulnerable communities hardest hit by the pandemic. And albeit we have a higher concentration of 65 and older, which is at higher risk, we were not deemed to qualify under their standards. So it remains to be seen what this means for our access to the vaccine. And then the new vaccine for Johnson & Johnson has been approved, and we are waiting to see when it will be distributed. On the next update, which is the Gold Line update, we've seen confirmation that Gold Line representatives will be surveying city and other properties as part of their acquisition process. This is a normal step in the process when any governmental agency is looking to acquire land, and then the city is continuing to evaluate alternate sites for the municipal yard. And that ends the COVID and Gold Line update.
And Gold Line. That was a nice condensed version. City Manager.
So this week, late last week, we received a request from Metro to support their efforts to receive $30 million for the 57 and the 60 Confluence Choke Point project in Diamond Bar, probably one of the worst places in the nation right now. And we provided a letter of support this week. Normally I would bring that to council and ask for council to have a letter of support, but given their timeline that was very, very short, I felt it necessary for us to be on record and support them in that $30 million grant application. We're tentatively holding Tuesday, March 30th at 6 p.m. for a study session for the council to discuss board, commissions, and council operations. This was the request that within the 90 days from the January 12th meeting that we come back and discuss the board and commission handbook and council operations. I've asked Captain Ashrafnia to collect data on our license plate readers that were installed. These license plate readers, we have 10 of them that were installed on the 15th of February. Much of the sheriff's office staff has been trained by the first of the month, and we've had some amazing results in terms of the amount of data that and situations that we've actually been able to garner. As of now, we've had 987,000, almost 988,000 license plates that have gone through the cameras and been recognized. 305 of them came back as stolen and lost license plates out of that.
Is that statewide, the licenses?
No, that's No, this is just through the city here, what's passing.
No, what I meant is the licenses that they flash on there, that they have in this system, is that for the entire state of California?
It's state and national, so it's anyone that's in the federal and state want list.
Oh, it's national.
Correct. So if you come here from out of town and you have a want on your vehicle, then yes, it should capture that. We had 17 stolen vehicle hits. And 3 reported stolen vehicles that were actually recovered. And in those 3 recovered, we had 3 arrests of the suspects that were driving the cars, I believe with no injury to our officers or anybody else. We've had 9 cases so far solved due to the cameras. Now, mind you, it's March 9th, and we're talking about a week and a half that this is the results. So in one case in particular, a victim stated that while they were driving, he was shot at by a suspect driving another vehicle. So utilizing the description of the vehicle provided by the victim, the flock system was utilized to identify the suspect's vehicle, and then subsequently one suspect was arrested and the crime gun was recovered. The incident actually occurred in unincorporated Covina, but our cameras actually assisted in capturing that individual. And the cameras that we have that differ from others, they recognize the color of the vehicle. And so if you may not capture the plate, but you know the color and some other descriptors, you can search based on those descriptors to be able to identify those vehicles. And then in a second case, this is the last one, 2 San Dimas residents, which were seniors, were victims of mail and identity theft. The initial investigations determined that the description of the suspect vehicle, which was responsible for 5 total incidents in the city of San Dimas, was found using the flock cameras. And utilizing that system, the investigation identified the vehicle and license plate number. And when our sheriff's office did further investigation, it led to a search warrant, and it resulted in identifying 27 additional victims outside of the city's jurisdiction. 1 suspect was put into custody, and the second suspect involved has been identified and outstanding. And so that's just the last week and a half to demonstrate the power of leveraging technology at a cost of about $25,000 a year just for the 10 cameras that we have. I'm really hoping that when we come forth, and we're looking at about September 14th for a 6-month review, Captain Ashrafnia will bring forward a more comprehensive report on the camera system, and I can't even imagine the amount of data that we're going to actually see at that point. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Super. City Attorney?
Mayor, I just wanted to let the council know that council approved a letter of opposition at the last meeting to Senate Bill 9, which is this year's bill in Sacramento known as the bill to eliminate single-family residential zoning in California. The legislature is attempting to pass that kind of a bill again this year. I learned that the League of Cities has come out to officially oppose that bill this year, and also learned today that the committee hearing on that bill is scheduled now for April 15th. So we will let the council know what the status of the bill is after that April 15th committee hearing. And that's all I have.
What a good day for a Senate hearing.
For government work, yes.
Good. Okay. Members of the council, there seems to be a senior citizen commission upcoming vacancy. Chris? Deborah?
Mayor, council, and the city staff, Commissioner James Shirley's term is expiring in April. He has served 3 terms and is not eligible for reappointment at this time. The Senior Commission currently seats 9 commissioners. With the upcoming discussions regarding possible restructuring of boards and commissions, staff needs direction on whether or not they should move forward with opening recruitment for the upcoming vacancy. That concludes staff's report.
I would keep it at 9 myself. We have no trouble filling that commission, and there's always people that want to belong to it. If we decide to change it, there'll be many vacancies in the future where we could just not fill those vacancies. But right now, I would keep it at 9.
Are we currently accepting applications for any other commission at this time, or until we waited until we had this discussion?
We're not accepting applications because there have not been any vacancies on any other commissions. This is the first vacancy that's come up outside of the Parks and Recreation and the Public Safety commissions that are on hold.
Chris?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, opening the application process does not mean that you're making an appointment. I think you need to be consistent across all the boards. But if you delay and wait opening the vacancy, then the process of then filling that vacancy gets pushed out. So if you resolve at the end of the month the specific aspects of boards and commissions that you want to change, I think by the time we have applications in, it won't be that much longer after that that we can make an appointment. And so it's just a question of how much time do you want a vacancy to go?
I only have one question, and I'm perfectly fine personally with us opening it up for the application process. But when we resolve this, at the end of the month, hopefully we can resolve it by the end of the month, okay? Are we going to open up the application period for every commission that has openings? Or are we saying that they've applied or they don't apply it already? It would just make sense to me that we open it for...
Doing it all at the same time, you're saying?
Yeah, that's what would make sense for me.
That would, I mean, I suppose we could do that, but that would be part of the change of the process that we're going through, is that we would then move towards having an open recruitment, like a lot of cities do every January or every December. They have open recruitment where they accept applications and they just keep them on record until there are openings for various commissions. So we could move towards that type of recruitment process. But our process has always been, we don't recruit unless we have an opening.
Right, but right now we have openings on the Public Safety Commission.
The Public Safety and Parks and Rec, we have openings, and those recruitments are closed. We've received at least 6 to 9 applications for both. And we closed, when we recruited, we gave it a 3 to 4 week period. And at least we had 2 recruitments for one, if not both of them. So we're no longer recruiting for either of those at this point because we have a sufficient amount of applications, if you will.
And we're going to be discussing this at the March 30th meeting on the number of commissioners, the recruitment process, any changes we want to make. So, I mean, for this particular action item, I think we should open the recruitment so that we have some candidates ready when we adopt adopt whatever process we're going to have, and then we can do, we would have them ready to go or ready to be interviewed.
Yeah, I agree with John. I don't see any harm in getting the applications, and then by the time we go through the exercise here in a couple weeks, at least they'll be teed up like the other 2 commissions, so we can take whatever action.
The only thing, and I have no problem agreeing to that, but this is going to be a study session to discuss this, but it's going to be a televised study session, which is going to generate interest from amongst people who maybe never had interest, and all of a sudden now they're going to hear about these commissions and all this other stuff, and yet we're going to say you can't apply because you didn't hear about it 8 weeks ago or 3 months ago or something. So I'm just trying to think a little bit out of the box and say, do we want to tell people, yeah, we got this thing, we just revised it all, but you can't apply for 2 years down the line or 4 years down the line whenever a position opens up again?
I hear what you're saying. My only thought on that is that the applicants that have already applied to be considered have already been waiting some time, and I think we should at least get through those folks and then re-advertise when after those positions, or if we do like you're saying. I mean, council very well could decide, as you're alluding to, that we just put the whole thing, just have one, keep all those we have already, and then reopen it for a period of time, take more applicants, and then just go through the exercise.
Well, it's, all I know is we seem to be hearing from people that they want to participate, and then we're just kind of cutting them off. And to me, I just think there's a way that we should think about it.
I don't know if I'm following, but when you say open recruitment, you mean open recruitment again for all commissions? Or I thought you were just talking, we're talking just for senior commissions. Because
I think you're hearing a voice. I don't know that I agree or disagree, but I think you're hearing a consensus that we should open this one up now. Okay, but my question was, and I'm probably out of line, was the fact that we have all these open commissions right now, or we have at least two commissions that have openings, okay? And I keep thinking that we're only going to take the 6 or 12 that's already applied for here, but yet we're going to be in public session, and people are going to start hearing about this, and I've heard 1,000 times in the last 6 months about people wanting to become involved who had no idea how to become involved.
Well, the applications that are on record now, from what I understand and what I've heard in the emails I've gotten, are from people who have been listening and who want to participate. And to open it up again and extend it again would not be fair to these people who have been waiting.
But the council can decide either way. On March 30th, you could decide to open it up again, or you could decide to not open it up.
So that could be a discussion we have then?
Yes.
All right, well, I think there's a consensus to go ahead and open up for the senior position, and make sure that Mr. Shirley knows we appreciate it, all that he's done for us.
He's been a great commissioner, he really has.
And with that, just to caveat on that, I'd like to start thinking about, as things start to open up with COVID-19 and all the other things, I think we need to start looking at trying to create some type of a ceremonial type thing, a luncheon or something like that, to say thanks to our volunteers. We did this years ago, and then when we had redevelopment problems, we canceled it. But there's a lot of people out there volunteering in this community that, probably deserve a little more recognition than they're getting. So I think that's something that the city clerk can at least put in the back of her mind, if it's in the budget. Or maybe Ryan and Dennis will throw some money in. Okay. Okay, councilman reports of any meetings you attended at the expense of the local agency?
None.
Seeing none. Okay, city council requests for future items, comments, and updates. John.
I didn't quite catch that. Could you?
I was hearing a voice there. Just a couple things. First of all, as was reported to us and in an update from Chris last week sometime, the dog park has reopened and it looks fantastic. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to look that way, but San Dimas is known for having one of the better dog parks around and maintaining it pretty well. So your dogs who have been lonely for their friends can go up to the dog park and meet each other again, and they don't have to wear masks. I think in the SP11, the waning moments of that, we talked about campaign contributions, and I said I self-fund most of my campaign. It doesn't mean I don't get any contributions, and I think Ryan might have mentioned something about Southern California Edison, and yes, that was a contributor of $250 to my last council campaign. And all of that information is public record, and you can find out how much everybody got, what all their finances were. I'm actually not sure how you do that, but there's a way of finding it out. I don't think I've really looked into it myself, unless I asked Deborah about it. But anyway, the last thing was I'm anxious to return to in-person meetings, and people have been wondering about that. And I don't like being remote and away from the rest of you, so I'd like to be in person. We're getting close, I think. I did notice that you might remember that back in January, and I think it was January 12th, when I mentioned that the deaths in San Dimas were at 57. Since that time, 24 more people have died in San Dimas, and so our San Dimas residents. And so it's at 81. So for whatever reason, San Dimas had a little surge a little bit after everybody else. I think it's leveling off now. But that kind of increase, 30% plus, in just a matter of less than 2 months, was still a little bit concerning to me. So that's my marker. I'm waiting for that to level off, and if it levels off to one a week or one every couple weeks, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to return to the council meetings, but I'll be especially happy that it's leveling off finally. That's a big thing that we're looking forward to. So that's just an update on when I'll be back in person there, and that's all I have.
Super. Thank you, John. Dennis?
Well, I just want to go back to specific plan number 11 that we talked about. That wasn't the most important vote that we've ever taken, but it was the most difficult vote that I've ever taken. And those in the public that are afraid of what's going to happen, I think we have to take the council at its word and wait and see what staff does. And we're putting a lot of pressure on staff to come up with something that's going to be reasonable and that looks nice. And as I said, I, for one, if I'm not satisfied, I'll vote against it. But I would think that staff realizes that I take your word for what you gentlemen said, that what council wants, something that looks attractive, and it's not the Great Wall of San Dimas. And that's what I look forward to. And I think it was a good discussion. That's it.
And I believe that the Great Wall of San Dimas is already coming through downtown San Dimas.
That's true.
So, Eric?
I think I've already exceeded my speaking limit for the night, but I'll just add that I have spent a considerable amount of time in Loma Vista Park recently because it just reopened, and I have a 6-year-old that has been dying to go back to Loma Vista Park, and it's absolutely fantastic. So thanks to Parks and Rec for that. And I'm really excited to hear Chris's report on the flock cameras. That's absolutely fantastic. And if whatever it was, $25,000 a year or something like that, and we're solving crimes like shootings already, that's absolutely fantastic news and money well spent. So I'm excited about that. That's it.
Ryan?
On the SB 11 issue, I just wanted to address one thing that was said earlier, or a comment that came in public comment about precedent setting. And I just wanted to be clear to the public, if it wasn't, that SP 11, specific Plan 11, is a specific plan in a specific area of the city with its own number even, in Planning Area 1. There is no precedence being set for undermining an HOA. If you were following the discussion, it seems clear that there's a municipal code issue that exists that is separate from the issue of governance and the CC&Rs as it relates to this specific matter. So, I don't, as in my experience as an HOA president, I am not concerned about it in that context, because I understand our responsibilities and I understand our CC&Rs, and I also understand where the city's responsibility is as it relates to municipal code. So to those HOA board members that have questions or concerns, I would encourage them to consult their HOA attorneys to be able to familiarize themselves with their jurisdictional responsibilities and where those lines are and where the cities are. To that end, to Councilmember Bertone's point, I too share his concern and sentiment that I hope that the intent is captured in what the motion was. I also I'll be disappointed if we can't get to that place to embody the spirit of it. But I also have to say to Dennis, when I ran in 2017, you were walking, knocking every door, and I think we said it after the election or after my swearing in, but you've proven, and I've grown to enjoy your statesmanship and the conversation and perspective over our term serving together. And we may not always be on the appropriate, or not the appropriate, but on the same side of things. But so I agree with you, or we find that place, and I do appreciate that. I respect you for that, and thank you for that. Lastly, to the flock thing with the station and the deputies here. It's Friday. I think you guys flipped the switch on this thing in a couple days. I think it was like 72 hours or something. One of the deputies picked up a stolen vehicle. I think it was a moving type of vehicle, and then the buzz. Everyone was going, "What's going on?" To the members of the community, and I've seen a lot of chatter about this, I'd encourage you to look at the staff report regarding this particular system. There's a video, I believe I posted it on social media. October 27, 2020 is when council made the consideration and decision. But this tool is an effective tool. And if you notice, it will take a little bit of time, I think, for a criminal element to realize that there's a tool helping our deputies to fight crime in San Dimas now, another tool in their toolbox, and they are effectively using it and safely using it as well, I might add. So I commend Captain Ash, our personnel, who are not only using that tool, but the many other tools that they use every day. And please keep up the good work. And I do look forward to that report coming back at some point in the near future regarding that initiative. That being said, I thank the council, to all of us, for that conversation on SP11. I think it was productive. I think it was contemporary. And it's a hard thing, I think, to look at something like that after so long, and especially with the revelations that emerged from it. And I think with our new city staff, our directors and staff members, with the leadership that's here now, this team, I'm hoping we're not going to find a whole lot more of hiccups like that. But if we do, bring them forward, let's address them, and let's move forward. And I appreciate staff's diligence in doing so, everybody that's involved with that. I think the community is going to be better off for it. So thank you.
Thanks. All right, I have just a couple of things, and one of the things is I'm hoping is we need to discuss at that meeting when we start looking at policies and things with that you're putting together, not only the commissions, but having a conversation just recently with a conversation with John, but I wasn't talking to John, I was listening to John, and then with listening to Dennis about campaign contributions. We need to bring back at some point a report that's that talks about if we're going to create a proclamation adjusting how we collect, campaign contributions, if we're going to set limits, because I understand it as of right now, we are under the umbrella of what the state's saying. So we need to, if we're going to adjust that from whatever the state's saying, and I don't know what those limits are, but if we're going to change it or modify it in any way, we need to have a discussion, and we need to bring it back with a resolution to send it forward. So we need to do that probably sooner than later, because, election time is not that far away. So if you guys could look into that, I'd appreciate it. As we sit here, probably about 100 yards away, we have the newest addition to Community Park, to our community park. I don't know if it's, I know they took the fence down. I don't know if there's a grand opening on it yet, but they've opened it up where our seniors have equipment. It's been in the making for a couple of years, but the equipment's been out there. They've got it hooked down, and today I saw quite a few seniors out there working on that equipment. I think the oldest was about 10, and so our kids are out there playing on it, and they look like they're having fun, but it actually was doing exercises. So I stood there for a minute, and I got a little winded, and I left. But no, the equipment is up and running, and I hope that our seniors, as soon as we get back to opening up the senior hall, that I think they're going to be excited about it. So that's good. The other thing, when we talked about the camera system, the flock camera systems, I have been reached out to. I believe Captain Ash has been reached out to, and I hope that you have been reached out to, from HOAs interested in becoming a part of that system. I think that's interesting because they're hearing about the good things that are happening, and they're worried about, they want to make sure that they protect their communities. So that is a way that we can reach out and work with the HOAs and see if, they just want to, they're willing to jump into it, put some money behind it, and hopefully that'll help our deputies. Maybe, if nothing else, it'll help them with the mail thefts. So, but I too want to congratulate the staff and the Sheriff's Department for having the foresight to look at that and push it, because they did push it, and the council accepted it. But thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, just one housekeeping item. You did request that staff bring back a discussion about setting a local campaign contribution limit. I just want to make sure there was another council member, a second council member, that agrees with bringing a discussion on that back. Okay, thank you.
We have to have a vote on it?
No, just two council members.
Okay. So that anything else, guys?
Motion to adjourn.
Good night.